The researcher knows they're risking their career at the SCP Foundation, putting their very reputation in jeopardy. But they can't deny their obsession. The creatures are fascinating, an anomalous insect species with a highly unique pattern of creating habitats inside human beings. The researcher has sidestepped the official approval process, using falsified requisition paperwork to gain access to their new subject in a solitary testing chamber. Everything is off the books, and for months, the insects have been toiling away, making themselves a new home. As they open the secure cell, they know the security officer they paid off will wipe the records of their keycard being used. The researcher steps inside and examines their new hive like a child with an ant farm. The skeleton is withered, misshapen beyond all recognition. Skin has wasted away to the consistency of tissue paper. The researcher wants to see just how much damage has been done. Peering into the gap where the skull used to be, it's immediately clear, even to the naked eye, that a significant portion of the subject's brain is missing. Tens of thousands of insects swarm within the cavity. They have to eat something after all. The portions of the brain that have been left intact are, the researcher has figured out, responsible for regulating the hive's functions. Every twitch could be the few organs left moving inside, or the insect scurrying around. The researcher wouldn't admit it to anyone, but he adores his hive. Getting to examine one this close is something that no other anomalous expert at the Foundation has ever managed to accomplish. It makes it worth the risk. Examining the hive, the researcher notes down any recognizable changes in its state. The decay and deterioration has been going on for months now, so long that day to day there doesn't appear to be much difference. That being said, the host still has their eyes intact, and those are yet another food source for the creatures nesting inside. The researcher gently lifts the eyelids, careful not to tear the delicate skin, and shines a flashlight into the unblinking pupils, expecting nothing but lifeless glass. But then, the shock hits. The eyes move. They're following the light. With a scream, the researcher drops the flashlight and rushes out of the testing chamber. They feel sick, alarmed, distressed. They thought the insects only nested in the dead. They had no idea that the hive was still alive. Given the anomalous nature of this insect species and its more concerning behavioral characteristics, several Foundation researchers examining their behavior have taken to referring to them as the bone hive. The Foundation's leading experts in the field of anomalous entomology were initially tasked with performing a full study into possible origins of the species, classified as SCP-015-IT following their discovery. The Foundation's findings have indicated a potential connection between the bone hive and Forficula auricularia, otherwise known as the common earwig. However, the exact nature of the presumed connection between the earwig and SCP-015-IT was somewhat difficult to ascertain, with some skeptical that they are even connected at all. Some researchers within the entomology department became convinced that SCP-015-IT was a previously undiscovered subspecies of Forficula auricularia. It possesses some similar physical traits, such as the flattened, elongated body shape and slender antennae often associated with earwigs, as well as the characteristic pincers at the tip of the abdomen. Their shared physical similarities begin to differ with their coloration. While most earwigs possess a reddish-brown tint, SCP-015-IT has more of a gray, semi-translucent color to its external skeleton. It measures 2.5 centimeters in length, which seems to be fairly standard for its non-anomalous counterparts. However, not everyone agrees. Several anomalous entomologists have pointed out that SCP-015-IT's behavior is vastly different from that of the common earwig. In their view, the differences are so extreme that any biological relationship between the two is virtually impossible. Forficula auricularia are nocturnal, typically scavenging dead plant and animal matter, then hiding under stones or inside rotten logs during daylight hours. They are considered a common household pest to humans, usually invading any small, dark crevices within homes that might be damp enough to lay eggs. Earwigs feed on organic matter, meaning when infesting human homes, they can often consume food that is stored in kitchen cupboards and pantries. Their colloquial nomenclature of earwigs, from the Old English ear beetle, is attributed to the appearance of their hind legs, as these resemble human ears when unfolded. But there is a popular misconception that these invertebrates climb into human ears whilst a host is asleep, with some stories even suggesting that they lay eggs within human bodies. While this is patently untrue and not how Forficula auricularia reproduces, the same cannot be said for SCP-439. When encountered in a safe environment, SCP-439 is relatively safe for humans to interact with. Much like an earwig, if the insect feels threatened, it will use its abdominal pincers to give someone a firm, painful pinch. However, it is believed that these forceps are more to ward off any potential predators than specifically evolved to cause humans harm. This does not mean that SCP-439 poses no danger to human beings, though. In fact, the opposite is true. One of the largest, if not the largest, difference between SCP-439 and Forficula auricularia is the methods it deploys for constructing a habitat for itself, and how it then reproduces. This is also the largest factor of the anomalous insect's behavior that presents a significant risk to human beings, because SCP-439 uses them as hosts. This was observed firsthand when SCP Foundation researchers initiated an experiment wherein a member of D-Class personnel, referred to as Test Host 1, was instructed to spend 24 hours in a controlled testing environment. The only other inhabitant in the room was SCP-439, though this information was withheld from Test Host 1. Prior to this experiment taking place, other life forms were left alone in the vicinity of SCP-439. Although the insect appeared to show little interest or awareness towards anything other than humans, all other creatures were uniformly rejected. It was only when a researcher, who will remain nameless to spare them embarrassment, noticed SCP-439 displaying significant interest towards them during an examination. The researcher was noticeably exhausted, struggling to keep awake, and this seemed to attract SCP-439. This was the catalyst for the experiment. Test Host 1 was permitted to freely inhabit the testing space and told that they would need to spend the night sleeping in the same room. After around 6 hours, during which proclamations of boredom were made a staggering 1,194 times, Test Host 1 was encouraged to sleep. Laying themselves down on a bunk that had been provided, they soon drifted into unconsciousness, and it was at this point that SCP-439 appeared to display the same interest in the D-Class test subject. Observing through the intense magnification of surveillance cameras within the testing chamber, anomalous entomology researchers noticed that, while Test Host 1 was awake, the insect had been hiding in a corner of the room, seemingly waiting for an opportune moment. It managed to remain undetected until the test subject fell asleep, though exactly how it was able to determine the D-Class personnel member was, in fact, asleep is unknown. It was at this point, though, that SCP-439 approached the bunk where Test Host 1 was dozing, crawling up the legs and over the blankets, before climbing into the test subject's mouth. Surveillance equipment in the room was immediately switched to display an X-ray look at the interior of Test Host 1's body. Researchers spotted SCP-439 traversing its way down the D-Class member's trachea, before eventually arriving within one of their lungs. Once here, the insect appeared to situate itself within the lung, using it as a habitat. Observation of Test Host 1 continued, with the subject awakening suddenly around 4 hours later, noticeably in some degree of distress. When questioned about this, the D-Class complained of intense chest pains, as well as showing significant shortness of breath. As they became increasingly frantic, they accused the researchers of administering some unknown substance while they had slept. At this point in the experiment, Foundation wellness handlers were dispatched to the control environment to try and calm the test subject and administer a sedative. However, before an attempt could be made to subdue Test Host 1, they doubled over in severe pain, complaining of excruciating abdominal cramping. They were still struggling to breathe, with the tightness in their chest increasing. An alarm was sounded and an emergency medical code issued for on-site medical staff, who were instructed to resuscitate Test Host 1 without causing any harm to the SCP-439 specimen currently nested in their lung. By the time emergency medical staff arrived, they noted that the subject had a rapidly climbing fever and was struggling to move, eventually becoming incapacitated entirely. Pulse checks confirmed that they were still alive, and medics were instructed to back away from the D-Class and allow the observation to continue. Though what occurred next was pretty hard to miss. Estimated to have occurred somewhere between 4 to 8 hours after SCP-439 entered the lung, Test Host 1's incapacitated body began convulsing violently. They began suffering the rapid onset of a condition that closely resembled fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, a normally genetic disorder that promotes the overgrowth of bones, often causing them to grow into muscle tissue. Their body began quickly developing new bones, these protrusions occurring so fast that they quickly began to pierce their way through muscle, flesh, and skin. The process was evidently even more painful, with the D-Class test subject screaming as several bone spurs began to protrude outwards from underneath their flesh. Despite their attempts to treat the resultant injuries, emergency medical personnel were unable to stop the copious bleeding. Their efforts were further hindered by the movement of Test Host 1, as the subject in question appeared to regain some semblance of consciousness, evading the aid of Foundation medics and attempting to hide under the bunk. It was later determined by anomalous entomology experts that something about the process compelled them to seek out shelter, drawn to the nearest darkened, enclosed space that they could find. Some have suggested that if Test Host 1's alteration by SCP-439 had occurred, say within a house, that they might have been drawn towards cabinets, closets, and heating ductwork. Petitions were made by the research teams observing Test Host 1 to continue the experiment without treatment in case of further development in the subject's condition. Despite a staunch opposition from the Foundation's ever-redundant ethics committee, continuation of the experiment was granted, and Test Host 1 was left untreated for 3 whole days. 2 days into the continuation, researchers requested that audio surveillance feeds of the testing chamber be cut, as they grew uncomfortable listening to the D-Class subject's screams of pain. By the 3rd day, the test subject was immobilized, thanks in no small part to the excruciating pain of the new bones growing, coupled with their difficulty breathing. It was at this point that the subject entered what the research team considered the final stage of transformation. Concealed in its new home under the bed, the affected subject slowly huddled into a fetal position, and as observed by X-ray scans, their skeletal structure continued to undergo anomalous changes. Entire portions of Test Host 1's skeleton began shifting inside them. While this was occurring internally, externally, the rest of their body was shriveling, shrinking down to around 3/4 of its original size. This continued until the host body was almost completely spherical in shape, though new bone protrusions continued to grow after the cessation of regular life signs. These newer protrusions seemed to anchor the host body in place, keeping it permanently in its new location. At this point, permission to conduct a close examination of Test Host 1 was approved. Several of the research team entered the testing chamber wearing protective coverings over their faces and hands. The skeletal structure that had once been a living member of D-Class had been rendered unrecognizable, converted into what some of the research team described as a cage. It was difficult to ascertain exactly how much internal damage had been caused by SCP-439, though close scans seemed to indicate that several of Test Host 1's internal organs remained functional, albeit in a limited capacity. This discovery sparked an ongoing internal investigation by the SCP Foundation Ethics Committee regarding the potential harm of allowing experimentation with SCP-439 to be performed on future human hosts. The main point of argument the committee has posed is that, while they may not be conscious, there are those who have debated that hosts could still be considered alive at this point in the process. Whether this constitutes grounds to halt experimentation on human test subjects is a matter that is still yet to be resolved. Monitoring of the newly formed bone hive continued, as spectral analysis revealed movement was occurring within the host long after its external movements had ceased. This wasn't the movement solely of internal organs, but of the colony that was now using the body of Test Host 1 as a home. The specimen of SCP-439 that had initially been allowed to nest inside of the D-Class test subject's lung had since become a queen, producing between 20 to 30,000 offspring. Initially, exactly how this had occurred was unknown. No mating process of SCP-439 was ever observed, leading Foundation researchers to the hasty conclusion that the insects must have reproduced asexually. These offspring of the original queen seemed to match the behavior exhibited by workers, drones, and warriors, distinguished by their large, powerful abdominal forceps. These specimens seem to match the typical roles found in other non-anomalous insect colonies, conforming to an insect hierarchy that was typical of most hive-based creatures. Of all the specimens now active within the remains of Test Host 1, only the queen appeared to be capable of reproducing. For a time, quarantine procedures were considered, as well as total incineration of the bone hive by mobile task force operatives using flamethrowers, in order to prevent a possible infestation. However, once it was confirmed that none of the other specimens posed a significant risk, these safety measures were rescinded. Research teams were flabbergasted by the state of the interior of what had previously been Test Host 1. The structure within was virtually unrecognizable as a human body, with various internal organs having been removed and seemingly destroyed. However, the lack of waste or residual tissue seemed to indicate that these organs had been consumed by the members of the SCP-015 hive and used as a food source. Other organs had been modified by the workers to be repurposed as incubation chambers for the eggs laid by the insect's queen. Most notably, anomalous entomology experts observed what they considered to be an indigenous behavioral trait that appeared to be unique to SCP-039 specimens. These anomalous earwigs appeared to use the digestive system of their host's body to process organic materials that warriors collected and deposited into the host's stomach. The colony will then manipulate the upper and lower intestines of their host, breaking down the organic matter into a slurry of nutrients. This is then used as food for the insects, and additionally allows the host structure to be sustained without succumbing entirely to total collapse. The state that hosts are kept in was described by one Foundation entomologist as a waking death. Colonies of SCP-039 cannot exist in perpetuity, however. In fact, their primary biological function appears to be to continue harvesting organ matter from their host until the colony produces a new queen. This occurred within 6 months of the initial implantation of SCP-039 into Test Host 1, though it's estimated that a new queen can be born in as few as 4 months in other cases. Once this new queen has emerged from within the colony's ranks, it will select a drone to mate with. This process completely derailed the Foundation entomologists' prior train of thought. They had previously believed SCP-039 to be capable of asexual reproduction. It appeared that the prior specimen had been impregnated with the necessary offspring to start a new colony at some point prior to being discovered by the Foundation. Once the new replacement queen is inseminated, the work of the existing colony ends. The specimens of SCP-039 will destroy themselves by rupturing the redacted within the host's body, ensuring the majority of the insects are killed while the new queen is protected. Workers and drones are unable to survive outside of the host, while warriors will abandon the hive to die having completed their tasks. These insects cannot consume any organic matter apart from the NutriHive slurry produced by the colony, so they will inevitably die once departing their hive of origin. The sole survivor, the newly formed replacement queen, will then exit the bone hive, fertilized and ready to locate a new human being to serve as the host for the next colony. It appears that these SCP-039 queens are able to stay fertilized in near perpetuity until they have entered a new host, though they cannot implant themselves within any mammals other than humans. The now vacant host of the previous colony will cease any residual life signs following the evacuation. A thorough post-mortem examination of the husk that used to be Test Host 1 revealed that the former test subject had not been killed by the mass trauma of several thousand insects burrowing out of them, but through starvation. Foundation experts in anomalous and altered human biology have posited the theory that the slurry produced by an SCP-039 provides just enough nutrients to keep their hosts on the verge of functionality. But after the evacuation, their bodies are no longer being sustained by this limited supply of cannibalized organic matter. Debate as to whether host bodies can be considered alive or not is still ongoing and unresolved. It is this process of utilizing human bodies as hosts for their hives that constitutes the key difference between SCP-039 and the common earwig. The severity of this difference has led to the belief that the two species only share a slight cosmetic resemblance, which some have chalked up to an evolutionary coincidence. Put simply, SCP-039's behavior is so unusual that it doesn't seem possible to many Foundation researchers that it could possibly be a distant relative of the common earwig. SCP-039 is to be kept at Armed Research Site 45 within the Hazardous Lifeforms Wing in a securely locked containment unit with a connected oxygen supply. Handling of the specimen is only permitted to personnel with Level 2 clearance or higher, and it is to be fed regularly through a feeding tube, using only the approved nutritive substances. While the specimen currently being studied by the Foundation was recovered within mainland China, there have been no reported sightings of similar insects within the vicinity of the redacted province, nor anywhere else in the world. Currently, the only known specimen is the one found by the SCP Foundation. This has not ruled out the possibility of other colonies of SCP-439 existing elsewhere.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning on a work night, and the last of the bar hoppers and clubgoers have long since turned in. At the end of the street, the last bar is finally closing down for the night. Or it would, except that the bartender is having trouble getting rid of a customer. Sitting at the bar, an old derelict is demanding yet another drink. The bartender grumbles in annoyance. This derelict is sloppy drunk, and the bartender just wants to go home. "Closing time," growls the bartender. "Just one more," protests the derelict, shaking his empty glass for emphasis. "I've got money." He laughs at his own words, his giggles ending with a loud belch that blows a cloud of aromatic vapor into the bartender's face. That's it. This derelict has been hanging out at this bar causing trouble all night, and the bartender has had enough. "Get out of here," says the bartender as he hustles the wobbling derelict out the door. "You're done." The derelict creaks and totters as he stumbles out into the street. The night's festivities are really hitting him. It isn't so often that he's got the money to burn, but when he does, he likes to spend it here. The prices are right, and the conversation is minimal, which is just the way that he likes it. The derelict turns around, fire in his eyes. He's raring to fight, and he doesn't care that the bartender is quite a bit larger than he is. Right now, all he can see is red. "Don't tell me when I've had enough," he slurs, raising his fists as he prepares to lash out. But the bartender has already slammed the door in his face. Defeated, the derelict turns his back on the closed bar and starts a slow stumble down the street. "Stupid bartender," mutters the derelict, turning up his collar against the cold bite of the night air. He wishes that he just had one more drink to warm his stomach against the chill. He's so out of it that he doesn't stop to think that the bartender did him a favor by refusing to fight. There is no way that the derelict would have won that battle. Even if he was in his physical prime, even if the bartender wasn't twice his size, the derelict is in no shape to fight. His vision is blurry and his head is swimming. In fact, he can barely remain upright. If he had any sense, he would probably stumble home and sleep this off. But the night is young, and he's not ready to give up yet. He walks down the street, eyeing every storefront in hopes of finding another bar. Unfortunately, every window has a closed sign in it. He swears under his breath. What a run of bad luck. What's a guy supposed to do in this town, he wonders. Just when he's about to give up hope, he spies something glinting in the reflective halo of a street lamp. He stumbles closer to get a better look, and he can hardly believe his eyes. Finally, his luck is changing. Someone has abandoned a half-empty bottle. "Well, hello there, little friend," says the derelict. He struggles to focus, but the world is spinning. In his confusion, he could swear he's seeing things. But no, he can feel the heft of the glass bottle in his hand, and he knows that it is as real as he is. "Who left you behind? Who would leave a perfectly good bottle just sitting out here?" He recognizes this brand. There's only about 3 fingers of liquid left, but that's better than nothing. Some people might balk at drinking out of a random bottle that you found on the street, but the derelict doesn't give it a second thought. He tips the bottle back and slurps it all down. It burns going down, just as it should, he thinks. He sighs in contentment as he feels the harsh liquid warm his stomach. Perfect. That really hit the spot. But what happens next surprises him so much that he can't believe his eyes. There's still liquid in the bottle. He blinks, wondering if maybe his adult brain is playing tricks on him, but he shakes the bottle cautiously and is rewarded with a telltale swish of liquid. That's no illusion. He takes another swig, guzzling it down. Normally, he'd drop the bottle to the ground and stumble on, but something makes him pause. He maintains his grip on the bottleneck and raises it again to take another look. And sure enough, there's still more left in the bottle. The derelict cannot believe his luck. He feels like he must have won the lottery. He's found a never-ending bottle. Already his mind is reeling with possibilities. "That bartender really thinks he's so smart," he mutters to himself as he weaves unsteadily. "But I don't need him anymore. See if I ever go to this stupid bar again. He just lost his best customer. Now that I have you, little bottle, I don't ever need to pay for drinks ever again." "It's the best day of my life," crows the derelict, raising his arms in triumph. He's barely able to stagger back to his home, a seedy apartment on the bad side of town, before he passes out on the floor. The morning sun rouses the slumbering derelict, and he rises with a groan. His whole body aches, and his mouth feels dry and parched. That's par for the course after a night of drinking. But somehow this hangover feels different. He puts that thought out of his mind as his mind returns to the strange, never-empty bottle that he discovered the night before. It's lying on its side on the floor next to him. He reaches for the mysterious bottle, only to find that, in fact, the previous night was not a dream. The bottle still contains just as much as it did the night before. He can't explain it, but the derelict isn't about to question his good fortune. He lifts himself to his feet and walks slowly into the bathroom. He's feeling a hangover like he's never felt before. His head is pounding and his throat is dry. His tongue feels swollen and sluggish inside his mouth, but he knows how to handle it. A little hair of the dog is all you need to help with the hangover. He takes another gulp from his bottle, but this time it brings little relief. And he notices something else strange too. It's his scalp. The skin on his head has started to itch, and he can't stop scratching. He feels like he's got the world's worst dandruff problem. He should probably take a shower, he thinks. He strips down and steps into the tub, turning the hot water on full blast and letting it wash over him. The shower only brings him temporary relief. Afterward, as he dries himself off, the towels feel rough and abrasive against his skin. His skin comes off in big, flaky patches, and his nails leave red trails in their wake. What's that? Is that blood? He examines his fingers to see that his nails have grown into ragged, claw-like talons. With a frightened yelp, he bites them off. It's easy to do. Although they look formidable, his fingernails are weak and brittle, almost as if he's dealing with a sudden calcium deficiency. What could be wrong with him? He remembers all the warnings he heard back in school when they used to march everyone into assembly to listen to lectures from the local police. At the time, he scoffed at the long lists of scary-sounding consequences of a lifetime of drinking, but now, he's not so sure. "It's probably nothing," he says as he examines himself in the bathroom mirror. His skin looks blotchy and infected. It doesn't take long before his hair and nails are out of control. His hair grows down to his shoulders, but comes out in big, ragged clumps if he runs his fingers through it. His claw-like fingernails are constantly breaking and cracking until his fingertips are bloody, and his quick is itchy and infected. If his habits had left him looking worse for wear before, he really looks awful now. For the next week, he barely leaves the apartment. He pulls the curtains and keeps the lights off, afraid that someone might see him. When the landlord bangs on the door, shouting that rent is late and demanding that the derelict hand over the money, he doesn't answer. He waits. The landlord gives up for now. That's good, thinks the derelict. It will give him time to think, time to figure out what to do about his disease. He knows that something is not right. Many of the local bartenders are, by now, probably wondering where he's gone. It's not like the derelict to stay away. He's practically kept the bar industry in this town afloat all by himself. It must be something major indeed to keep him away from his favorite poison. Luckily, he still has the bottomless bottle to comfort him during this trying time. The derelict is certain that he's caught some bad bug, but he thinks that he can wait it out. All he needs to do is make it through the next week, and everything will be fine. Sipping free drinks helps him to pass the time in a pleasant stupor as he waits for his health to return. Unfortunately, things are only going to get worse for him. His hair and fingernails keep growing, to the point that he has trouble lifting the bottle without his twisted nails getting in the way. His dry, flaky skin is changing as well, becoming thick and leathery and hanging off him in great folds like the hide of an elephant or a rhinoceros. His skin continues to grow, until the folds flop over his knees and gradually hang lower and lower until they touch the ground. Moving is harder now that he's carrying so much extra weight. He thought at first he just had a nasty bug, but he's clearly picked up some weird skin condition, and even this derelict, sodded as he might be, suspects exactly where he got it. It's got to be that crazy bottomless bottle. He can't think of another reason. Even so, he can't bring himself to part with this little gift from heaven. Even in his darkest hour, a few sips of liquid courage always helps to calm his nerves. He considers lumbering down to the free clinic in hopes that they might be able to cure him or at least tell him what's wrong with his skin. But he thinks better of this option. What if he's got some weird alien parasite that no one has ever seen before? They might lock him away in some government lab or something. No, he reasons, it's better to wait it out. He'll sleep it off, swear off the sauce for a little while, and maybe it'll pass. In desperation, the derelict drags himself across the floor, hoping to at least find some solace away from human contact. He locks himself into his bedroom while he's still able to manipulate the lock on his door. The extra folds of skin are hanging off of his hands and arms, making it hard to do anything. The extra skin is so heavy that he can't walk much carrying all that extra weight. He lies on the floor of his bedroom, away from everything, and hopes that tomorrow, when he wakes up, this will just be a fading dream. The only thing that brings him solace is the never-ending bottle, which, even now in his advanced state of decay, he keeps close by him. After all, he reasons, the damage is already done. What could possibly be the harm in enjoying a nice drink? A week later, his condition has not passed. The landlord is back, and this time he's not taking no for an answer. The landlord isn't supposed to enter his tenant's apartment without permission, but he doesn't care. He uses his own key to unlock the door and go inside. The condition of the apartment is appalling. The furniture is broken, the floor is covered with unidentifiable filth, and there's a rotten stench in the air. The landlord wants to throw up as the full weight of the musty smell hits him in the face. It's as if someone has been living in here without any ventilation, with all the windows firmly closed and sealed. A sudden noise from the bathroom draws his attention. Of course, thinks the landlord, that old bum is hiding in there. He thinks I won't find him. The landlord steals his resolve and heads towards the bathroom, determined to get the money that he feels is owed to him. But what greets him when he steps through the door isn't the derelict anymore. It isn't even human. The creature in the bathroom is a massive pile of ambulatory skin folds. The skin flaps have grown so large and cumbersome that the derelict within can barely move. They sprout all over his body, covering him so that he looks more like some kind of alien sea cucumber now than any human. The landlord stumbles backwards, screaming in terror at the sight, unable to comprehend what he's looking at. Improbably, the creature reacts to the noise, and a ripple of movement spreads across its surface. It starts to move, despite not having any legs. The landlord is so terrified that he doesn't notice the glass bottle that suddenly drops from between the creature's skin folds as it starts to move toward him. The same bottle, still with 3 fingers of liquid inside. How could something like this happen? What parasite or disease did the derelict contract from the miracle bottle he found? Sadly, this never-ending bottle isn't a boon, but a curse, and the man who found it that night became just another victim of what the SCP Foundation has classified as SCP-015-IT. SCP-015 looks like a perfectly ordinary bottle of a certain popular libation, even to the point that it bears the label of a common brand. The bottle always contains a small amount of a mysterious liquid known as SCP-020-1. If this liquid is poured out, SCP-020 will always replenish itself. When SCP-020-1 is potent, it is physically, chemically, and molecularly indistinguishable from ordinary whiskey, although drinking will have an effect far greater than even the strongest liquor. When SCP-020-1 is poured out of SCP-020, though, it undergoes a strange transformation, eventually losing its potency and changing until it is indistinguishable physically, chemically, or molecularly from urine. Consuming potent SCP-020-1 instigates a bizarre physical transformation called SCP-020-2 in 6 stages. In Stage 1, beginning 12 hours after consumption, the subject will start to have difficulty speaking, resulting in slurred speech that is not consistent with normal alcohol inebriation. Their fingernails, toenails, and hair will start to grow at an accelerated rate, but also become brittle and prone to breakage. Nail breakage to the quick often leads to bleeding and infection. The Foundation has had some success in curing SCP-020-2 if it is caught when still in Stage 1, treating it as if it is an aggressive form of cancer with radiation and chemotherapy, as well as a constant intravenous supply of Formula 420A09T-T174B. Victims thus treated have a 73% recovery rate, but a 21% fatality rate. From Phase 2 onward, this protocol can slow the spread of SCP-020-2, but will not stop it entirely. In Stage 2, beginning 1 to 2 weeks after Stage 1, the subject's skin begins to show similar properties to those exhibited by hair and fingernails in Stage 1, becoming dry, brittle, and prone to cracking. As old skin flakes off, the subject's new skin begins to grow at an accelerated rate, eventually forming thick, leathery folds all over the subject's body. Skin flaps growing inside the mouth interfere with speech and eventually render subjects mute, but do not appear to impede breathing or eating. Indeed, subjects in Stage 2 exhibit a renewed interest in eating, possibly because the subject's body requires additional nutrients and calories to build the increasingly heavy armor of thickened, calloused skin. Stage 2 subjects will eat anything that they can get their hands on, and many die after attempting to eat poisonous or inedible objects. In Stage 3, beginning 3 to 6 weeks after Stage 2, nerves in the skin layer grow uncontrollably, but no longer connect to the victim's central nervous system. Genetic testing of the skin in this stage reveals that its DNA has become so mutated that it can no longer be classified as human. It is, in fact, a separate and very inhuman organism that almost acts as a parasite growing from the human host. The skin may develop tumor-like growths, which appear to be analogous to human muscle and secretory cells. Hair and fingernails sprout randomly from the mass of skin. By stage 4, beginning 3 to 7 days after stage 3, the skin has become a mass of thick, leathery folds, completely covering the human host to the point that they disappear completely. The skin begins to exhibit random twitching movements, as though it is indeed a living organism finally coming into its own as a life form and testing out its new body. The human subject within the skin continues to eat, although brain scans reveal that they are no longer in control of their mouth. Instead, the skin entity forces the mouth to move by moving the attached skin. Small holes begin to form in the skin, eventually growing into narrow tunnels or throats that lead back to the now trapped body of the helpless subject. The subject is still consumed with a ravenous hunger and will eat anything that they can get in their mouth. In stage 5, beginning 1 to 2 days after stage 4, the skin begins to move in patterns indicating rudimentary intelligence. The skin, although still attached to the original subject, is now completely and distinctly non-human. It is its own organism. It can move of its own accord, dragging the trapped host along for the ride, and it moves and feeds much in the manner of an extremely large amoeba. It feeds by excreting a digestive enzyme onto foodstuffs and then enveloping the nutrients with its skin folds, again like an amoeba surrounding its food. The food is taken into the throats. These tunnels connecting the outside of the skin to the now completely subsumed host are now directly connected to the host's circulatory system and function as additional mouths. They can consume nutrients which are moved down their length by bristly hairs and further broken down by grinding keratinous plates before being taken into the host's body. Most hosts will remain in stage 5 indefinitely, although there still remains a much more dangerous stage 6 yet to come. At this time, it's unknown what factor triggers SCP-015-2 to develop into Stage 6. Little information about Stage 6 is available at this time, although it is known that it involves even more accelerated skin and keratin growth, resulting in a sudden increase in size and mass. Perhaps the most terrifying part of the entire transformation is that the host remains alive for the duration of the process, and sometimes even after SCP-015-2 has settled comfortably into its new life at Stage 5. Mercifully, most hosts will have completely succumbed to insanity by this point, although some are shown by brain scans to still be self-aware and quite calm, perhaps fading into a Zen-like state as they accept the inevitability of their fate. SCP-420 is contained in a storage locker at an undisclosed site maintained by the Foundation, and it is only to be removed from this locker by SCP staff with Level 3 clearance or higher. It has been given the Safe class because, despite the horrifying nature of its effects, at least it doesn't move anywhere. Samples of SCP-420-1 not in use by testing should be stored in the container marked SCP-420-1 Decon in Locker 1014-420 until they lose potency, at which time they can be disposed of as biohazardous liquid waste. Victims infected with SCP-420-2 are not contagious and should be contained in standard solitary D-class secure confinement. On reaching Phase 3, subjects should receive double rations. Due to the extreme danger of Phase 6, any subjects who reach Phase 4 should be closely monitored for signs that the condition may be advancing further, in which case they are to be immediately destroyed by incineration. Knowing the fate that befalls victims of SCP-420 should make anyone think twice about drinking out of a random bottle that you just found in the street, though personally, I think that's just common sense.
A young man tosses and turns in bed. He adjusts his pillow and tries sleeping on his back, his side, his stomach, but nothing works. He rolls over to check the time. 3 a.m. This is the third night in a row he hasn't been able to fall asleep. He feels tired. He wants to sleep. But every time he closes his eyes and sleep starts to creep in, something happens. And suddenly, he's wide awake again. It's as if someone keeps flipping a switch in his brain to awake, and there's nothing he can do to stop it. It's affecting everything in his life. He can't concentrate in class, his work performance goes down the drain. Even his hobbies become completely unenjoyable. All he wants to do is sleep. His friends and family can tell something is wrong. It's as if he has become a different person, and they urge him to go see a doctor. But the doctors tell him there's nothing they can do for him. He's perfectly healthy otherwise. He should try some natural remedies like valerian root and get more exercise. He has no idea how many days he's been awake now. 4, 5, maybe more. At this point, the lack of sleep isn't even the worst part.
It's the hallucinations. Sometimes they're just a shadow dancing outside of his vision, but others are incredibly vivid, feeling more real than his now dreary life does. He had to stop going to work and class entirely since he can't concentrate for more than a couple of seconds at a time. His friends don't want anything to do with him, and who can blame them? He has uncontrollable mood swings and lashes out for no reason. He's tried every sleep remedy there is. He took the doctor's advice and exercised as hard as he ever has. But with never being able to sleep, he has no energy left. He's becoming a living zombie. He gets up out of bed but loses his balance and collapses to the floor. He tries to get up, but he can't. He'll just lie there for a while. He starts to drift away, and he readies himself for the jolt that always wakes him back up. But this time, it doesn't come. The wave of sleep that starts to wash over him feels different this time, though. It's heavier, more peaceful, and more permanent. Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, and this is SCP-015-IT, also known as Sleep Killer. SCP-015-IT is the designation that the SCP Foundation has given to a creature that belongs to a group of anomalous predatory beasts, standing 1.4 to 1.6 meters tall and weighing roughly 30 kilograms. These hairless humanoids have an elongated face, a mouth full of pointed needle-like teeth, and each of their hands has 5 razor-sharp claws that can be up to 20 centimeters in length. Though unlike humans and apes, they are digitigrade, meaning that they walk using only their toes. But you won't be able to see the horrible visage of SCP-015-IT under normal circumstances, as they are only visible under very specific lighting conditions. They can only be viewed under light that has a wavelength between roughly 700 and 900 nanometers, which is just at the edge of the light spectrum that's visible to humans, stretching into what's known as infrared light. The only exception to this is if their skin, muscles, or organs have suffered from 2nd or 3rd degree burns, in which case, the affected areas of their body will show up under a greater spectrum of wavelengths that are visible to the human eye. Though frightening to look at, SCP-015-IT are actually quite weak physically, with very low muscular density. Their bones are hollow, similar to birds, and while their claws may be incredibly sharp, they are also easily broken, making them unsuited for use in combat. Additionally, they do not rest through sleep, but will, at seemingly random times, stop all movement and fall into a rest period that lasts roughly 3 to 5 minutes, after which they are able to resume their normal behavior. With all of these physical shortcomings, how did SCP-015-IT gain a reputation as such a fearsome hunter? The secret lies in their ability to emit bursts of a previously unknown type of wave. Hunting either alone or in pairs, SCP-015-IT uses this wave to inhibit its prey's ability to enter any of the restful sleep stages, and also stops the ability to microsleep. These waves have been observed to be effective at up to 20 meters, though tests have shown that they can be blocked by post-transition metals, of which lead appears to be especially effective. SCP-015-IT hunts and feeds on medium to large-sized animals, which includes humans, and once their quarry has been targeted by the sleep-inhibiting waves, the effect is permanent, with no method having yet been discovered that will allow them to regain the ability to sleep. Experiments have shown that unconsciousness can be induced in other ways, such as with the use of general anesthesia, though these methods have ultimately proven to be ineffective, since although the victim is unconscious, they are still not receiving any of the restful benefits of sleep while in that state. The effects of sleep deprivation on humans, both mentally and physically, are devastating. Symptoms can begin setting in after just 24 hours that can include mood swings, memory issues, and sensory impairment. After 2 to 3 days, the body's hormones become deregulated, and bodily functions like hunger, thirst, and temperature fluctuate wildly as cognitive abilities start to dramatically decline. Hallucinations, paranoia, and fits of rage are common, and the risk of death from sleep deprivation increases with each day that passes without sleep. And this is exactly what SCP-015-IT wants. After surreptitiously sending a burst of sleep deprivation waves at their victim, they will then stalk their prey until lack of sleep finally leads to total incapacitation, at which point SCP-966, consumes them. SCP-966 have proven to be both extremely quiet and agile when hunting. However, they have actually been observed intentionally making threatening noises around their prey, presumably to further increase their already elevated stress levels, and potentially hastening their mental degradation. On rare occasions, they will even physically assault their victim to further degenerate their mental and physical health. Some of SCP-966's prey will experience especially intense hallucinations and bouts of rage, which is theorized to be caused by prolonged exposure to multiple instances of their sleep-stopping waves. Why some victims are exposed to multiple waves when a single instance has been shown to be 100% effective is unknown, and it's hypothesized that they may only engage in this behavior when especially hungry, to try and speed up the process, though others have put forth the theory that SCP-966 may take some perverse form of joy in seeing its victims suffer prior to expiring. Wild instances of SCP-966 have been found across the globe, and while the SCP Foundation has been successful in thinning their numbers, they still exist in high enough numbers to pose a serious threat to humanity. For these reasons, they have been assigned the classification Euclid. Mobile Task Forces Iota-1 and Iota-2, codenamed the Dream Hunters and Air Chasers respectively, are continually monitoring for any reports of sudden or violent deaths related to sleep deprivation in order to identify and neutralize the remaining instances of wild SCP-966. 4 SCP-966 specimens, 3 males and 1 female, have been acquired by the Foundation, and they are currently contained in a 10 by 10 meter room that is lined with lead and equipped with infrared security cameras. Each specimen is fed 20 kilograms of meat each month, and in the event that the female specimen gives birth, the new specimen is to be taken for observation and study before being disposed of prior to reaching maturity.
A young man is in the middle of one of his regular night jogs through the park. He loves running through this park at night. It's dark, the air is cool, and the sounds of the city that surround the park disappear, offering peace, quiet, and a small reprieve from the busy world. He jogs along a path that winds through the park and starts upon a section that is surrounded on both sides by tall trees. He follows the path around a sharp bend and is stopped in his tracks. Standing there, in the middle of the track, is a figure. It has its back to him and isn't moving. He's tall and so uniformly black that he almost disappears into the night. Whoever or whatever this is, he's scared of it. But the creature doesn't move, and neither does he. He's frozen, unsure of what to do, when the creature suddenly turns his head towards him, revealing a pair of bright, glowing eyes. The runner is so terrified he can't even scream. He falls and crawls backwards in the dirt, trying to get away from the creature. The creature turns its body towards him and begins stepping forward. The runner scrambles to his feet and runs. He's sprinting as hard and as fast as he can, adrenaline pumping, heart pounding, trying to put as much distance as he can between himself and that thing. His muscles burn, his lungs ache, but he can't stop. Finally, he's back at his house. He bursts through the door, locking and bolting it behind him. His girlfriend is reading on the couch and doesn't understand what's going on. After struggling to catch his breath, he tries to explain what he saw on the path, but his girlfriend just laughs. A giant man with glowing eyes? He was just seeing things in the dark. It was probably a dog, nothing that would justify the panic he was now in. The next day, he's left wondering if he really was mistaken. Those piercing, glowing eyes are burned into his mind, though. Maybe his girlfriend was right, and it really was just a dog. Yes, that must be it. His mind was just playing tricks on him in the dark. Even so, he's going to stick to running inside, at least for a little while. But he soon finds that he's having a hard time. He notices that he's running out of breath much quicker than normal. Is he coming down with something? He doesn't feel sick, but then why is he suddenly so weak? 2 weeks have passed since he saw something in the park. No one he brought it up to, not his friends, not his co-workers, have ever heard of such a thing, and no one seemed like they believed him either. At this point, he is feeling sure that he really did imagine it, but he can't get that image of whatever it was out of his head. He can't keep running on a treadmill forever, though. He misses his night runs. It's time to get over his fear. He's running through the park again, enjoying the silence and the light breeze on his skin. He continues down the path, acutely aware that he's getting closer and closer to the spot where he saw that thing before. He can't stop, though.
He has to prove to everyone that he's not afraid. He has to prove it to himself. He reaches the part of the path that runs through the tall trees. Just like before, the sounds of the city melt away, the only sound coming from his steady, heavy breathing. He follows the winding path and feels his heart starting to race, but he has to keep going. He rounds the same corner and nothing is there. He slows to a stop. Of course nothing is here. Nothing ever was. He really did imagine it. Or did he? Buongiorno. Today's file comes from the Italian branch of the SCP Foundation, SCP-015-IT, also known as The Boogeyman. SCP-015-IT is a humanoid entity that stands just under 2 meters tall. Its body is devoid of any hair, and its dark, black skin absorbs 98% of all light, making it virtually invisible in low light. Its head lacks a nose or ears, but these missing features are hardly noticed, because if you see 015-IT, its eyes are what demand all of your attention. While the Boogeyman's skin is completely black, its eyes contain light-producing organs on the irises, causing them to glow in the dark, like a deep-sea predator. Its mouth contains 8 pointed teeth on both the upper and lower jaws, and a long 28-centimeter forked tongue. The 2 tips of its tongue each have a hollow, needle-like organ that leads straight into its esophagus. More on what it does with that specialized biological feature soon. Physically, SCP-015-IT is rather slight, but it is surprisingly strong and easily able to overpower an adult human. Its skinny arms are much longer than an average human's, and each of its 4 fingers ends in a razor-sharp claw. It has also been shown to be quite resistant to physical injuries and possesses the ability to heal wounds and damage to internal organs at a hyper-accelerated rate. SCP-015-IT is primarily active at night, which is unsurprising given its skin's natural camouflage in the dark. The Boogeyman hunts mammals, with humans being its preferred prey, but it does not feed on flesh. Instead, SCP-015-IT draws its sustenance from the adrenaline and noradrenaline produced by its quarry. Adrenaline and noradrenaline are chemicals the body produces to increase heart rate, blood flow, and provide more energy to the muscles in moments of stress, or in the case of SCP-015-IT, extreme fear. And it has developed a hunting method to cause this exact reaction in humans. 015-IT will usually hide in dark spots, trying to keep out of sight as much as possible as it stalks its next victim. If it has been able to remain unseen, it will wait for a moment when its prey has become distracted, so it can silently approach them. Once close enough, it will leap towards its unaware victim, grab them, and quickly bite them on the side of the torso, near where the adrenal gland is located. It uses its large teeth to anchor its mouth in place, as it uses the needles on its forked tongue to probe into their body. With one needle, it pierces directly into the adrenal gland and begins draining the blood that is now rich with fear-induced adrenaline. At the exact same time, the other needle releases a mild sedative, allowing 015-IT to feed and then depart without risk as the victim remains immobile. Another anomalous effect occurs when someone is unlucky enough to actually see the Boogeyman. Roughly 2 weeks after observing the creature, the person who saw it will begin experiencing various detrimental mental effects, including hallucinations and panic attacks. Some will also begin to experience physical issues, most often damage to the cardiovascular system. It is unknown why exactly these mental and physical effects occur, but it is theorized that SCP-015-IT may use it as a way to weaken certain prey that it considers too strong or potentially dangerous. In 2011, the Boogeyman was actually contained, but not by the SCP Foundation. The Brotherhood of St. George's Knights is a secret order in the Catholic Church that was created by the Pope in the year 453 to either contain or eliminate all anomalies, and it was this group that first captured SCP-015-IT, which they designated as Dia 212, in line with their own classification system. While it was in their containment, they made a number of discoveries about the creature that they labeled as a shadow demon. First, they found that while it feeds on the fear of its victims by ingesting their blood, it doesn't actually require this to survive. Dia 212, as they call it, is an unstable entity, and feeding allows it to maintain its physical shape in our reality. In addition to its impressive physical strength,
The Boogeyman is also quite intelligent, as seen by its ability to successfully hunt, attack, and escape from humans. Strangely, it also appears to be resistant to weapons which have been blessed, causing only a fraction of the physical damage that they should when compared to a similar, non-holy version. During the course of research into the creature, Father Ilardi, a member of the Brotherhood of St. George's Knights, wrote that despite the creature being repugnant beyond every limit, he believed that it had a gentle soul, and that its screams are similar to a pained cry. He postulated that SCP-015-IT may have even once been a human before some dark force transformed it into the monster that it had become. He decided that it was his mission to find a way to communicate with the creature, and one day bring it back into the light and love of his god. Father Ilardi was making good progress with the creature, and it seemed like it was even growing fond of him and his disciples. But his advances were halted when they were attacked by a group of soldiers from the Fascist Council of the Occult, a terrorist group that seeks to use anomalies as weapons in their quest to disrupt the social order. In the attack, several of the Brotherhood were killed, and in the commotion, SCP-015-IT escaped. Following this, reports soon began to come from the province of Caserta that described what sounded like vampire attacks. A mobile task force was sent to the area, and while 015-IT was initially able to make use of its various physical abilities to evade and escape capture, it was eventually shot with a transmitter that allowed it to be tracked. The Italian mobile task force was able to surround the creature, but fearing being contained again, it responded with a level of violence that it had not been thought capable of. Several members of the task force were killed in the line of duty before the Boogeyman could finally be subdued. Today, SCP-015-IT is contained at Site Vittoria in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy. Since this anomaly is both sentient and highly unpredictable in its behavior, it has been classified as Euclid. It is kept in a standard humanoid entity containment cell and is monitored by video cameras and infrared sensors at all times. Due to the light-absorbing properties of its skin, its cell and the adjacent corridors are painted white and are to be kept well lit at all times. Twice a day, SCP-015-IT is given a normal domestic pig that it is allowed to feed on. Any personnel assigned to 015-IT duty must undergo a psychological assessment on a weekly basis, and, regardless of the results, must be cycled out after 3 months of exposure to the Boogeyman.
Candace Hayes, we have thy confession. A witch as brazen as you shall be burned at the stake. The crowd gathered in the small room bursts into a cheer as the judge hands down the sentence. The accused woman doesn't react, though. She looks neither scared nor afraid, but simply resigned to her fate. No time is to be wasted in carrying out the punishment that the judge has decreed. A pair of constables grab the woman by the arms and take her away. A mob follows along as the woman is led through the town, taunting and jeering, calling her a witch, a wife of Satan, and worse names. She doesn't seem affected by them, though. In fact, she looks as if she can't even see them. Her attention is focused solely on one mysterious woman who walks along with the crowd, and yet somehow seems disconnected, as if she isn't truly there either. The two women maintain eye contact as the constables keep pushing the condemned woman along. They lead the woman outside of town to a tall hill. The ropes binding the woman's hands are cut, and she has just a moment to rub her sore wrists before she is forced to the ground and lashed to a piece of wood as another group tosses the last logs onto a nearby pile. Once she is securely tied down, the constables step away, but then another man wearing a hood approaches. He carries a large club and without hesitation begins beating her legs. The woman's composure finally breaks, and she cries in pain from the cracking of her bones. The crowd only cheers louder at the screams from the witch. The beating has left the woman's legs mangled, but this is far from over. The woman, still strapped to the wood, is placed on the pyre, where she hangs like a scarecrow above the combustible material. The judge steps forward out of the screaming mob, carrying a torch. He loudly exclaims that for her crimes, she will be burned until dead. But the judge doesn't step forward. He instead announces that another will have the honor of lighting the flame. Another man steps out of the crowd and takes the torch from the judge. He walks towards the pyre and looks up at the woman. She is exhausted from the beating, but she lifts her head. She doesn't look at the man with the torch, though. She's looking past him, locking eyes with the mysterious woman who walked along with the crowd.
The man looks angry, slighted that she won't even meet his eyes in this final moment, and without another moment's hesitation, he tosses the torch onto the pyre. The wood lights instantly, the tinder combusting and turning into a huge roaring fire. The crowd also erupts into even louder cries of celebration as the woman screams from inside the blaze. The man watches as the woman is lost behind the fire and the smoke, and eventually, her cries too are hidden behind the crackles and pops of the flames. He doesn't move until the fire has nearly burned itself out. Most of the crowd has left at this point, having gone back to their homes, content with the role they played in doing the Lord's work. As the constables pull a charred torso down from the wood and unceremoniously toss it over a steep side of the hill, the man finally turns and starts to walk away, a tear rolling down his cheek. The judge approaches and places a hand on the man's shoulder. "There, the judge says, attempting to comfort the man. "You'll find a new wife soon enough." Hundreds of people were accused of witchcraft in colonial America, and while it is likely that many were falsely accused, there is reason to believe that some were under the influence of, or were themselves, what we now describe as anomalies. And SCP-3998 is just such an example, better known as the Wicker Witch Lives. SCP-3998 is a human cadaver which dates from the late 17th century that is covered in fourth-degree burns and is missing its legs. There is also evidence of extensive blunt force trauma, but it is not known if the beating or the burning was the ultimate cause of death. At some point, the remains were collected and fastened into a scarecrow that is held together with wicker, nails, and wire. While a scarecrow fashioned from a cadaver is rather unconventional, what brought SCP-3998 to the SCP Foundation's attention were its other anomalous attributes. It constantly secretes a flammable liquid from its bones that primarily consists of ethanol and human fat, and every night between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., the corpse ignites. This fire doesn't cause any damage to the corpse, though, and it is unknown how it produces the flammable liquid or ignites. 3998 does not keep its flames to itself, though. It appears that the SCP targets those who have either killed or physically abused a romantic partner, causing them to catch fire as large quantities of boiling ethanol appear in their stomach. Their midsection will eventually melt and then explode, leading to amputation of the lower half of their body. The fire burns both incredibly hot and unnaturally fast, and is unable to be put out until SCP-3998 is extinguished. A number of historical documents related to the case have been discovered and made available to Foundation researchers that shed light on SCP-3998, including excerpts from a 17th century diary belonging to a woman who lived near where the cadaver was discovered. In the entries, the woman describes attending the wedding of her neighbors, Aidan and Candace Hayes, though Candace did not seem especially happy with the arrangement. Candace is characterized as someone who likes to keep to herself, and who does not conform to the era's idea of a good wife. As a result, it appears that she became the victim of abuse at the hand of her husband. The diarist hypothesizes that Candace has brought this fate upon herself due to her behavior, which may stem from her being under the hold of the devil. In other words, the neighbor believes that Candace is a witch. Others must have had the same suspicion, because we also have records of Candace's interview with a Judge William Stoughton, who questioned her about the accusations of consorting with evil spirits. Candace readily admitted to this, though she disagreed that it was in any way evil. She told the judge that the rituals and magics she practiced were not inherently good or bad, and that anyone was capable of using the same tools. She went on to explain that she hated her husband, that she had been forced to marry him, and that he had been nothing but cruel and violent towards her. Candace also mentioned a name, Clovis, that the judge assumed to be the demon that she had made her cursed pact with. Candace appeared to offer no defense or excuses for her actions, and the judge sentenced her to die by burning at the stake, with her husband, Aidan, being the one to light the fire. The story of this witch trial was typical of the time, and that likely would have been the end of what we know about SCP-3998. But another historical document was located that has truly given a new perspective to this anomaly. A sealed letter found in the cellar of a home that is addressed to Candace, though it appears to have been written after her death. The letter is from her secret lover and describes how they collected Candace's burnt bones from the bottom of the hill before binding them together with wicker and wire. The letter then describes how Candace's husband has recently restocked his own home with gin, which is well known to be extremely flammable. The letter ends with an affirmation of the writer's eternal love for Candace and is signed, Clovis. But perhaps the best information we have about the origin of SCP-3998 comes from an obscure local tale that was passed down orally for years and eventually documented on an urban legend website. The legend tells of a woman who promised her soul to a she-devil who taught her magic, but also offered companionship. When her husband found out, he contacted the local authorities and had the woman arrested. She was tried, her legs were broken, and she was hung up like a scarecrow before being burned alive. Her body was dumped off the side of a mountain, but the she-devil collected her bones and gave her life again. The need for revenge burned in the woman's heart, so in the middle of the night, she doused herself in her husband's gin, set herself on fire once more, and fell upon him as he slept, burning him alive so he could suffer the way that she did. SCP-3998 is currently held in a secure holding locker in Site-34 that is fireproofed and vacuum-sealed to prevent it from igniting. Every morning at 9 a.m., 3998 and its locker are cleaned to remove the secretions of flammable liquid. D-Class personnel who have been convicted of domestic abuse crimes are to always be kept at the site to ensure that they are the targets of SCP-3998, which, when it's not allowed to ignite, will result in them only feeling mild discomfort in their head and chest rather than spontaneous combustion. Due to its relatively easy method of containment, SCP-3998 has been classified as safe. However, recent developments have caused the Foundation to rethink this classification. Despite 3998 being securely contained, the number of arson-related homicides in the state of Massachusetts have actually increased following containment, with many showing the same damage to their body as would be expected in a victim of SCP-3998. And while it may be that these are the result of a yet uncaught serial killer who simply happens to employ similar methods of killing their victims, a recent re-examination of the SCP-3998 corpse has revealed more troubling details. The body of SCP-3998 does not belong to Candace Hayes, and in fact appears to be a male who was in his 30s at the time of his death. Following these new revelations, reclassification of SCP-3998 to Euclid is pending. Whether SCP-3998 is the body of Candace's husband Aidan, forced to endure an eternal punishment of burning again each and every night, or if it's some other unfortunate victim of a violent and painful death, is unknown, as is the ultimate fate of Candace and Clovis. But with the deaths that would appear to be attributable to SCP-3998 showing no signs of stopping despite containment, it can only be assumed that the Wicker Witch lives. A kindly-looking old woman is carrying groceries into her home. When she closes the door, a crack forms in the wall, and a tile slides down off her roof, crashing to the ground and shattering. The next day, the local builder seems confused. He just fixed a similar problem a week ago at another house, and another the week before that. He'll patch this crack just like he did before and repair the roof, but as he does so, he can't help but think he'll be at another house with the same problem soon. Old people are like this sometimes, though, breaking things on purpose to get someone to come visit them. Oh well, as long as the money is right, he'll keep doing the repairs. That evening, the old woman is in bed when she's woken up by something falling onto her face. A crack is opened in the ceiling right above her bed, and plaster is falling on her. What is happening to this house? She would have to call the builder again in the morning and let him know that it was getting worse. She gets up to clean the plaster dust off her face, but stops halfway to the door. Was that a noise she heard? It sounded like it was coming from downstairs. Another noise. She definitely heard something. Is someone in her home? "Hello?" she cries out. "Whoever you are, you better go. My husband is going to be home any moment, and he won't be happy." The noises seem to have stopped. Maybe she was imagining things. Who would rob a poor old woman, after all? She didn't have anything worth taking. She still needs to wash the plaster off her face, though. She listens for a moment, and when she doesn't hear anything else, she opens the bedroom door and screams. The next day, a child stands in front of the house with a look of shock. Was there an earthquake? How could a house end up like this? They ring the doorbell, but there's no answer. They knock on the door and are surprised to find that the door is open. "Grandma?" the child cries into the quiet house. No response. The child enters and looks around. The house is a mess. Chunks of plaster have fallen off the walls and ceiling. Shelves have fallen over, spilling their contents. And there's broken glass from shattered light bulbs everywhere. The boy looks up the stairs and can see that his grandmother's bedroom door is open and the light is on. "Grandma, are you up there?" Still no response. The child nervously starts up the stairs, gripping the railing tight. They quietly make their way to the bedroom and step into the sliver of light coming from the cracked door. The child pushes the door open to find their grandmother on the floor. Only, it isn't their grandmother. Whatever this is looks like their grandmother, but like she has been stretched and twisted, her body bent at angles where no joints exist. The child is paralyzed with fear, unable to do anything but stare. But the nightmare isn't over yet, because their grandmother is still alive. Sadly, reports like these are all too common in this small town that is plagued by attacks from SCP-015-IT, also known as the Crooked Man. SCP-015-IT is an extremely dangerous anomalous creature that is currently plaguing the population of Tenby, a small rural village in Oxfordshire, England. Every 12 years during the fall and winter months, SCP-015-IT will engage in a period of hostile behavior that lasts for roughly 70 days, during which time it will target and attack people who are indoors and alone after sunset. Those targeted by SCP-015-IT will find that the building they are in rapidly deteriorates, causing damage and creating structural integrity issues. These often appear as cracks on the outside of the building that lead to the buildings taking on a crooked appearance. Unfortunately, while the SCP Foundation is aware of both the location and the periods within which SCP-015-IT operates, it has so far been unable to prevent any attacks. Additionally, the Foundation has yet to be able to produce either an image or even a physical description of SCP-015-IT due to the effect it has on recording equipment. Cameras set up to capture the anomaly produce only distorted or corrupted footage, leaving its appearance a mystery. Victims targeted by SCP-015-IT meet a fate that is, in many ways, worse than death. Their bodies will experience extreme deformations, as their bones suffer dozens of fractures and are stretched and twisted in various unnatural directions. They are then healed by the rapid generation of cartilage and the growth of extra skin to cover the new elongated limbs, leaving the victims a malformed knot of gnarled extremities. Some of the cases are quite severe, with one victim having just their forearm extended to over 2.4 meters, and another who was left stretched to 12.5 meters in height. Despite the gruesome injuries suffered, the majority of victims are still alive following the attacks, though they will more often than not be left completely paralyzed, in a persistent vegetative state, or both. 27 victims of SCP-015-IT are currently being held in a long-term care facility within a wing of a local hospital that was requisitioned by the Foundation specifically for the care and treatment of 783 victims. Like many of the anomalies that the SCP Foundation investigates and contains, many of the residents of Tenby appear to have some awareness of the Crooked Man, and the anomaly has become something of a local boogeyman. Researchers have even documented local school children singing a nursery rhyme that appears connected and may even explain the origins of the creature. It goes, "There lived a crooked man who made a crooked deal. He kept a crooked cane and his catch in crooked creel. He stole a crooked child who cried a crooked squeal, and that crooked little man was broken on the wheel." A month before a recent SCP-783 period of activity was to begin, a Class D personnel, D-209, was sent to live in a Foundation-owned home in the village. Audio and video recording equipment was set up throughout the house in case the D-Class was targeted, in the hopes that some information could be gleaned should something take place. 43 days after he began living in the house, something finally did. One evening while in bed reading a book, D-209 heard noises on the ground floor of the home. Cameras on the first floor experienced corruption and showed only a distortion moving through the house. When D-209 attempted to leave the bedroom and escape the home, they immediately encountered SCP-783. During a period of time that lasted roughly 5 hours, their bones were broken numerous times and reset over and over, leaving D-209 a twisted mass of flesh and bone. Strangely, at the exact same time that D-209 was being attacked, All 27 of the living prior SCP-783 victims in the hospital experienced violent seizures, despite most of them having been declared functionally brain dead and the rest being totally paralyzed. Also concurrent with the attack was a seismic event on the outskirts of town, and the details revealed by this event were both illuminating and extremely disturbing. Foundation personnel were dispatched to the site of the seismic activity to investigate and determine if it was connected to SCP-783 in any way. There, they found a small group of angry townspeople, perhaps frustrated by seemingly unending paranormal events in their town and the lack of progress that had been made to stop them. After a tense standoff, SCP Agent Collins fired her service weapon into the air, and the crowd quickly scattered. Now, free of distraction, the agents could begin their investigation in earnest. They immediately spotted several objects sticking out of the earth. Upon closer inspection, these were identified as elongated human toes. A dig team was sent to the site, and by the next day, a mass grave had been uncovered that was filled with the twisted mass of what appeared to be victims of SCP-783. Their mutated and drawn-out bodies were well preserved despite being buried directly in the ground, and had all been buried head down, with their arms extending deeper into the burial pit. As one researcher was attempting to take a tissue sample from one of the bodies, the ground beneath him gave way and he fell into the pit. He landed on the tangled mass of limbs which shifted under his weight, and he disappeared into the pit beneath them. Agent Collins immediately found a length of rope, tied it to her waist, and climbed into the pit with instructions to the on-site team to pull her back up when she signaled. Agent Collins descended into the pit beneath the bodies, and after several minutes, she was extracted, though without the missing researcher. At debriefing, she described how she found an anomalous location under the ground beneath 783's victims' corpses, and she was so rattled by what she saw that she was granted a temporary leave of absence. The Foundation had to know more, and a D-Class personnel was quickly selected for exploration of the underground anomaly. D-2172 was equipped with audio and video recording equipment, along with several scientific measurement tools, as well as a firearm, and was lowered down into the pit via crane. Their wired tether to the surface would both send the information they collected back, as well as serve as their lifeline to the surface. As D-2172 was lowered past the mass of corpses into the darkness, they experienced a sense of vertigo, before it was realized that the anomalous effects extended to gravity as well, which had become reversed, and that they would need to start climbing up in order to descend further into the pit. They soon climbed out of the hole surrounded by the reaching, extended arms of corpses, and emerged into an open world with an overcast sky. It looked exactly like the town of Tembe, with the same buildings present there as in our world. The world appeared to be uninhabited, though, with no sign of the missing SCP Foundation researcher. D-2172 began investigating the buildings and found them all to be empty as well, though they did unfortunately find signs of a struggle in one house, with what looked to be evidence of the missing researcher's demise. They continued exploring the area and found that the anomalous properties of the location extended to its borders too. And as the D-Class walked north out of the town, after several kilometers, they found that they were now somehow back at the southern edge of the town. D-2172 was ordered to return to the entry point, but as they walked, they were suddenly impeded by the deformed body of an SCP-783 victim that stretched across the road in front of them. D-2172 drew and fired their weapon at the entity, but it didn't react, and they were forced to retreat into the nearby woods. After several minutes, they stopped to rest when they spotted something else. In the distance, the D-Class saw what looked to be a giant white birch tree, and it was coming towards them. As the living tree approached, it became clear that it wasn't a tree at all. What looked like branches were extended bony fingers that it was using to walk. The long, branch-like fingers were coming out of the top of the tree, where D-2172 could see their origin. These branches were the elongated fingers of the missing SCP Foundation researcher. D-2172 turned to run as the giant living tree chased them back into the town, firing their weapon at the creature whenever they had the chance, but was unable to stop it. The visual feed was soon lost as the audio continued to broadcast the screams of D-2172. But this wasn't the end of the expedition. The on-site team was surprised to witness after several hours that the tether was pulled on twice, the signal that it should be reeled in. A medical team was sent to the site since it was assumed that D2172 would need immediate care, and the team began reeling in the line. After several minutes, they spotted the harness that should have been strapped to D2172, but with nothing in it. They continued to pull, but the harness became stuck on the mass of corpses in the pit. They then noticed that it wasn't actually stuck. There was a hand holding onto the harness for dear life. It was D2172's hand. The team kept pulling as D2172's arm kept stretching out of the pit to a length of over 3 meters. But eventually, the resistance became too much. D2172 lost its grip, and it was seen sinking back into the mass of corpses inside the pit. Following this expedition, it was determined that only special operations teams and mobile task forces would be used to explore the dangerous anomalous location in the future. At least 3 such expeditions have been undertaken, though the details remain classified for the time being, and perhaps it is for the best if they remain so. The SCP Foundation will continue to monitor the town of Tembe in an attempt to learn more about SCP-783 and hopefully discover a means to contain it and its related phenomena. Due to the difficulty in containing the anomaly, it has been classified as Keter, and a local building adjacent to the Tembe Hospital has been requisitioned and designated as Provisional Site 5 in order to accommodate the increased Foundation presence. As the SCP Foundation continues to research this mysterious and highly dangerous anomaly, any victims of SCP-783 are to be retrieved, their injuries cataloged, and then their bodies are to be incinerated.
Ouch! The boy on the bus turns around. Did someone pull out one of his hairs? He looks around, but the girl in the seat behind him is staring out the window. She's so quiet and always keeps to herself, he doesn't think it possibly could have been her. The boy turns back around, wondering if he just imagined it, unable to see the small smile forming on the girl's face. The bus stops, and the girl practically sprints off and up the sidewalk to her house. She runs past her mother without saying hello and goes straight into her bedroom, closing and locking the door behind her. She sits at her desk, opens a drawer, and pulls out a small bag. She reaches into the bag and takes out a folded piece of paper. Congratulations on your purchase of a genuine Knotty Stalker. Do you love someone but they won't give you the time of day? Do you wish you could hear what they say about you behind their back? Well, wonder no more. Using this fantabulous product, you can keep track of your loved one's every move, their every word. The girl imagines herself watching a tiny version of the boy on the bus right here on her desk, seeing everything that he does, listening to his secret thoughts and desires. If only she knew him better, then she'd have the confidence to talk to him and could get him to like her as much as she liked him. She reaches into the bag and pulls out the Knotty Stalker. It doesn't look like much, just a little doll made from a woven and twisted length of red string. She looks back to the instructions. All you have to do is get a single hair from the head of the object of your desires, slip it under a loose string in our Knotty Stalker, and see what you've been missing. The girl reaches into her pocket and takes out a single strand of hair. She holds the hair up to the light, looking at it. If this works, it will mean all of her dreams coming true. Just like the instructions said to do, she takes the hair and slides it under a string on the doll's body. She sets the doll down on her desk and waits, and waits, and nothing happens. She picks up the instructions again, turning them over, but there's nothing else except another wonderful product brought to you by blah blah blah. Where were the rest of the instructions on how to get it to work? Why wasn't the doll coming to life? What a piece of junk. Wait. What was that? The girl leans in close. Is the doll breathing? She's startled as the doll turns its head over its shoulder, seemingly looking right at her, or rather, right through her. "Coming, Mom," the doll shouts before standing up. It starts to walk in place, looking like it is opening invisible doors, and then sitting down on a chair that she can't see. It looks like it's pretending to eat dinner. The girl's eyes widen. The doll is alive. It's really alive. It's actually showing what the boy is doing right now. The Knotty Stalker has worked. The girl is fascinated by watching the little doll that gives her a peek into her crush's life. She skips her own dinner so she can watch him finish his. She watches as he sits, probably watching TV, takes a shower, and gets ready for bed. It may all just be a little doll acting it out, but it feels like she is there with him. She watches the doll sleep for hours before falling finally asleep herself, her head resting on the desk next to him.
The next morning, she passes by the boy and his friend sitting together on the bus and goes to the very back. She gets as low in the seat as she can so no one can see her and takes out the doll, holding it up to her ear. She listens to one side of the conversation as the boy talks about the action movie he watched last night, Weapon of Mass Extinction. The boy talks about how much he liked it and how it's his new favorite movie. This was perfect. It's exactly what she needed. The next day in school, as the boy is putting things into his locker, the girl approaches. She pretends to trip and drops her books in front of him, the books scattering on the floor in front of him. The boy helps her pick them up and notices the DVD she dropped, Weapons of Mass Extinction. She explains that she brought her favorite movie to school to loan it to a friend. What a coincidence that they both happen to love the same film. The boy and the girl, bonding over their love of low-budget sci-fi action films, start spending more and more time together. No one has ever understood him the way that she does. It's as if she has known him for years, even though they've only been friends for a few days. Things move quickly though, and before long, he realizes that he is having romantic feelings for the girl. This is all the girl had ever wanted, and it's all thanks to the naughty stalker. Things are going so well, in fact, that she imagines she won't even need it much longer. But then, something strange happens. She is sure she heard the boy tell his friend that he loved baseball, but when she brings up the idea of going to a game together, the boy looks at her like she was crazy. He hated baseball. After that, things seem to change. The boy is still so nice when they are together. Now it sounds like he is talking about her behind her back. She worries that she has been wrong this whole time, that he has just been messing with her. This stupid doll isn't making her dreams come true. It's making her life a nightmare. But wait, who is the boy talking to? She leans in close to listen. Is he with another girl? Listening to one side of the conversation, she hears the boy tell someone that this is all just a big joke, a prank he is pulling on some dumb girl. Are they? No, they can't be. Kissing? The girl is in a white-hot rage. She can't believe he would do this to her, after she was nothing but perfect to him. She throws the doll across her room. She's going to confront the boy and whoever he's with. She'll teach him a lesson. She'll teach both of them a lesson. It's starting to rain as the girl gets her bike out and starts to ride to where she knows he is, the spot that was supposed to be their own special place. Cars pass close by on the narrow road, splashing her with water, but she doesn't care. She finally reaches the picnic spot where he took her just a few days ago, and she sees a car parked nearby. It must belong to the evil seductress he is with. The girl glares at the car. She grits her teeth until they feel like they might crack. Her fists are clenched so tight that she can't tell if it's the rain or blood from her fingernails digging in that she feels running down her palms. But she doesn't care. She's going to show both of them what happens when you break someone's heart. She takes a step towards the car, and the car that struck her slams on its brakes. The driver gets out and rushes towards her. It's the boy. Her boy. The older couple who are stopped on the side of the road with a flat tire run over to help. The boy gets down next to her and cradles her head in his lap, and they have one last moment to look into each other's eyes before the light fades from hers. Unfortunately for all involved, their lives would never be the same. But how could they have known that they were the victims of an encounter with an anomaly that, while small, is extremely dangerous? One that is known to the SCP Foundation as SCP-015-IT The Naughty Stalker. SCP-015-IT are multiple humanoid-shaped dolls, measuring roughly 18 centimeters in length, each made from a single string that is either red, blue, yellow, or black, with onyx beads for eyes. Their clothing will vary in color and style, and seems to have no bearing on the properties of the doll. The string doll will behave exactly as one would expect, showing no anomalous properties at all, until the owner takes the steps that are spelled out in the instructions that always accompany SCP-015-IT. The instruction sheet congratulates the owner on their acquisition of a naughty stalker and explains that in order to use it, a single hair from another person must be inserted into a loop of its string, at which point, the doll will attune to that person. The doll will then come alive, mimicking the actions of the hair's owner in real time, including their speech. The doll will perfectly portray the attuned individual for 9 days, after which point it will become unreliable. The exact way in which SCP-015-IT begins changing the speech and actions depends on the color of its base string, but in all cases, its end goal is to drive the current owner of the doll to their death. SCP-693 goes about this by feeding inaccurate information to the owner. Dolls made of red string try to send their owner into increasingly violent fits of rage. Dolls comprised of blue string try to depress the owner and lead them to self-harm. Yellow dolls want to make their owners attempt unwanted acts of physical love, and black dolls encourage their owners to engage in activities and place themselves in situations that are dangerous. Interestingly, SCP-693 will attune not just to the living, but to the deceased as well. When a dead person's hair is placed in a loop of string, the Knotty Stalker will come to life, just as it does when a living person's is used. But instead of acting out the speech and movements of the person, the attuned doll will claim to be the deceased person and offer to act as a spiritual guide to the owner. But just like with a living person, at the 9-day mark, SCP-693 will become unreliable and will attempt to lead the owner down a path that results in their death. Once an SCP-693 instance is successful in causing its owner's death, a new doll instance will appear and be found on the owner's body. Several of these dolls have been recovered from Knotty Stalker victims, and currently, the Foundation has 7 red instances, 10 blue instances, 5 yellow instances, and 1 black instance in its possession. All instances of SCP-693 contained by the Foundation were originally classified as safe and kept in Containment Locker 12C-K, but following the events of Incident 693-E, that classification was revisited. During this incident, a researcher returned a Knotty Stalker doll to its containment locker, but in a lapse of judgment that went against Foundation protocols, they forgot to remove the hair that had been placed in the doll. When the locker was next opened, the dolls were observed to have all been moved. They were found in a circle around the accidentally still attuned doll, which had been crucified upside down on the wall of the locker. It is unknown where the dolls acquired nails. After this incident, a camera was placed inside of the locker, and the results were surprising, to say the least. It turns out that SCP-693 instances come to life when they are not observed, even when they aren't attuned. While they have not yet been observed engaging in violent acts against each other, the camera has captured the Knotty Stalkers appearing to reenact the final 30 minutes of their last owner's life over and over. Following this new information, all instances of Knotty Stalker dolls were moved to their own separate 25 by 25 by 25 centimeter steel containers within the containment locker, and their classification was upgraded to Euclid. SCP-693 is one of the rare anomalies where the Foundation actually has quite a good idea as to where it originates, and it was very easy to discover as well. Provided that they aren't a deception, the instructions that appear with each instance of SCP-693 are quite explicit about where they come from. After congratulating the owner on their acquisition and explaining how the doll works, the instructions close by extolling the Knotty Stalker as yet another wonderful product brought to you by the Factory. For those unaware, the Factory is a place with a long connection to the Foundation, though the details on that will have to wait for another file exploration. All you need to know now is that the Factory produces a huge amount of anomalies, and it appears that SCP-693 is one of them. There are theories that the dolls may have been produced as an espionage tool, but as for why their primary purpose seems to be driving their owner to their death, well, that we simply don't know.
The drive should have been peaceful. A quiet road, endless fields, and the occasional mailbox. But tonight, the world looked like it wanted to swallow itself whole. Rain slammed against the windshield, and the wipers were fighting a losing battle. The headlights barely cut through the storm, illuminating nothing but mud, trees, and the endless churn of water. It was the kind of night where bad things happened. The pastor gripped the wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white as he muttered under his breath. The call had come in an hour ago. An old farmer on the outskirts of town was at death's door. No family, no friends, just an old house, a creaking barn, and the slow drip of time. It was his duty to go. That's what he told himself. Lightning cracked overhead as the house finally appeared at the end of the road. One flickering porch light swayed in the wind, casting long, shifting shadows across the flooded dirt. The pastor sighed. This feels cursed. He stepped out of the car, his boots sinking instantly into the mud. He trudged forward, pulling his coat tighter as the wind howled through the empty fields. He knocked once. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the house was too quiet. The air smelled damp, like old wood and forgotten things. An oil lamp flickered weakly on the table, barely pushing back the dark. Then, a cough. A wet, rattling thing coming from the next room.
"About time,"
the old man yelled. The pastor stepped forward, boots squeaking on the warped floorboards. He followed the sound to a small bedroom and stopped. The farmer lay in bed, barely more than bones under a blanket. His skin was waxy and bruised in places where it shouldn't be. His hands, twisted and wrong, gripped the covers like they were the only thing anchoring him to this world. And his ears were gone, just two jagged, infected stumps where they used to be. Blood had dried into dark streaks down the side of his neck. His head twitched slightly, like he was listening. The pastor swallowed. How did that man hear him come in? The farmer's sunken eyes slid toward him. Doesn't matter, the farmer croaked, as if replying to the pastor's thought. His lips barely moved, but his throat rattled. You gonna do this or not? The pastor's skin prickled. He gazed over the man's misshapen arms, the bruises over his ribs, the way his legs lay completely still under the covers. A man didn't get injuries like that from illness. The pastor's stomach knotted. He fell. No, he jumped. His mouth felt dry. You tried to. Didn't work, the farmer rasped. He wasn't looking at the pastor anymore. His eyes had gone distant, like he was watching something behind him. The pastor didn't dare turn around. A gust of wind hit the house, rattling the windows. The candle flame shook violently, making the shadows lurch. The pastor reached into his coat, pulling out his small leather book. This is fine. Just another dying man, desperate to make peace before the end. You wanted your last rites? The farmer exhaled sharply. His cheek twitched. Yeah, won't do much good though. Another one who doesn't believe, the pastor thought to himself. The old man laughed, but it was breathless, a whisper of a sound, like something moving through dry leaves. Oh, I believe, the farmer murmured. I just know he ain't listening. The pastor frowned. He was almost positive he didn't say his last thought out loud. That's not true. The farmer's eyes slid back to him. And tell me why I've been hearing them. A crack of thunder boomed through the house. The pastor stiffened. Hearing who? The farmer's breathing hitched. His fingers flexed under the blanket. His lips moved, but not in time with his voice. They whisper, the old man rasped, but his lips never said it. The pastor opened his mouth. The farmer's body arched. His mouth fell open in a soundless scream. His chest heaved, ribs pushing up against his skin like something was pulling from the inside. His eyes, wild, desperate, locked onto the pastor's. Then, the scream hit. But not through the pastor's ears. It slammed into his skull like a church bell ringing in reverse. A sound that wasn't a sound. A force that wasn't a force. The impact nearly made the pastor retch. His vision blurred at the edges, the room tilted. Then it was gone. Silence. The old man collapsed back onto the bed. The pastor gasped, chest heaving, fingers clenched so tightly around his book that the leather creaked. The lamp flickered once, then held steady. The house was just a house again. The storm hadn't stopped. The wind still roared outside. The candle flame still danced weakly. Nothing had changed, except him. But the pastor didn't know that yet. He exhaled slowly, and then, because this was still his job, he gently closed the farmer's eyes. The funeral happened a few days later. It was small. A handful of townfolk stood under a gray sky, heads bowed, hands folded. The wind had finally gone still. The pastor stood at the head of the grave, Bible in hand. His voice carried low and steady as he spoke the final rites, the words as familiar to him as breathing. The farmer had no family to claim him, no visitors to say goodbye, no one except a few neighbors, an old friend or two, and the pastor himself. And the grave was shallow. The town's gravedigger had mentioned it in passing earlier, something about the body being fragile. The pastor had nodded. He hadn't asked questions. The coffin was lowered, the dirt followed. The mourners lingered only briefly before heading back down the hill. Soon, it was just the pastor and the gravedigger. The man wiped his forehead, looking down at the freshly packed soil. "Strange thing," he muttered. "Do you see his ears?" The pastor kept his gaze fixed forward. He had seen them. The man chuckled uneasily. "Must have been real desperate to stop hearing things." The gravedigger silently mused to himself. "Well, guess it don't matter now," the pastor replied, as if words had been spoken. The gravedigger looked at the pastor, perplexed. He exhaled sharply, tossing his shovel over his shoulder. The pastor, unaware of what transpired, pulled his coat tighter against the cold. "Thank you for your work." The gravedigger nodded, muttering something about rain before heading off down the hill. The pastor stayed a moment longer. A question gnawed at the edge of his mind. He still couldn't figure out how that farmer heard him enter the house without ears. The wind stirred at his back, just enough to send a slow, crawling chill up his spine. The pastor turned away from the grave and left. He had a sermon to prepare. The church was quiet that afternoon. The pastor sat alone in the confessional, hands folded neatly in his lap. The booth was dimly lit, the wooden lattice between the two compartments casting a familiar pattern of light and shadow. It had been years since anyone had requested a confession in person. Most people were content to sit in the pews, whispering their regrets to themselves. But today was different. One of the men from the funeral, another farmer, younger, broad-shouldered, face lined with hard years, approached after the burial. His hands had fidgeted, his gaze never quite meeting the pastor's. "You have time to hear a confession?" The pastor had smiled. Of course. Now, seated in the booth, he listened as the man shifted uneasily on the other side. The wood creaked. A breath hitched. The pastor waited. A pause. Then, "I've been unfaithful to my wife." The words struck like a match in the dark, but the man had not spoken yet. The pastor's body went still. His hands, folded neatly in his lap, tightened slightly. The man let out a slow, shaking breath. And then, just as the pastor knew he would, he repeated the words he had heard aloud. The pastor felt a strange, almost hollow sensation bloom in his chest. Had he imagined it? No. It had been exact. The same words, the same tone, the same weight of shame pressing against them. The pastor inhaled slowly, carefully. His pulse had quickened, but his voice was steady. "Repentance is the first step toward forgiveness, my son." The man exhaled, relieved. They prayed together. The confession ended. The pastor watched the man leave, disappearing into the cold afternoon light. Alone once more, the pastor leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together, fingertips pressing against his lips. His heartbeat was still quick. It had to be a coincidence, didn't it? The pastor let out a slow breath, gaze falling to the dim glow of the candle burning on the altar. "This is a gift," he told himself silently. "A blessing." Outside, the wind picked up again. That Sunday, as the pastor began his sermon, he heard every single thought in the church. It was a slow, creeping realization. He had opened his Bible, drawn in a deep breath, and spoken the first few words when, "I hope this doesn't run long. I should have eaten before coming. Did I leave the stove on? I can't take this anymore. I want a divorce." Does he actually believe this stuff? The voices stacked on top of each other, layer upon layer, too loud to be whispers, but too quiet to be speech. The pastor paused and looked at his parishioners. No one was moving their lips. He gripped the pulpit tighter. Something strange was happening. His gift was beginning to feel like a curse. Willing his voice to remain steady, he tried to push through it, tried to finish the sermon, but the voices swarmed into his head. "Maybe if I scratch just a little, no one will notice. I hate my job. I hate my life. I wish I could just disappear. Why is he sweating?" The pastor's throat narrowed. The words blurred on the page. His vision swayed, like the walls were tilting inward. He closed the book. With a shaky voice, he uttered, "Let us prepare for communion." The line moved slowly. One by one, they approached. The first was a teenage boy, hands shoved deep in his pockets, hair still damp from the morning shower. "I wonder if Pastor knows how much weed I smoked before coming in," the boy thought to himself. The pastor's fingers twitched as he placed the wafer on the boy's tongue. The next, an old woman, face lined with deep wrinkles, her eyes sharp beneath her sun hat.
I should call the police about my neighbor. I swear he has bodies buried in his yard,
she thought as she piously opened her mouth to receive her wafer. Then a father, kneeling reverently, son at his side.
I don't even know if this is my kid.
The pastor's breath caught. The line creeped forward again. A kind-faced woman, hands folded, smiling warmly.
Does he know this is all a lie?
The pastor's ears buzzed. The next.
I hate my wife. I hate my wife. I hate my wife.
The next.
God isn't listening.
The next.
The pastor has big hands. I wonder if...
The pastor's world tilted sideways. His ears hummed violently, drowning out the organ, the rustling of clothes, the shifting of feet. He staggered. A hand caught his arm. Someone murmured his name, concerned. But beneath their voices, beneath the worried whispers, he could hear what they really thought.
He's sick.
He's losing it. Is this a test?
The pastor took a breath, sharp, unsteady. He had to get out. He bolted out of the church and ran to his car. All he wanted was some silence, but the drive home was worse. The stoplight turned red, and the cars lined up beside him. The silence lasted a second. Then, it flooded in.
I should just floor it. If I get hit, at least I won't have to go to work tomorrow.
Do they know I stole the money? I don't think they know. God, I hope they don't know.
Does this rash mean I have something?
The pastor's fingers gripped the steering wheel. The light turned green. He sped through the streets until he made it home. He slammed the door behind him, the echo swallowed by the stillness of the room. The apartment was small, simple, a place meant for peace, for self-reflection. But within moments of stepping into what should have been his sanctuary,
I wish I had died first,
an elderly widow thought to herself in the unit next door as she knitted by her window. The mailman locking his truck down by the curb.
What if I just left? Just kept driving, never looked back.
The pastor clenched his jaw, squeezing his eyes shut, pressing his palms against his temples. He could hear everything anyone was thinking within a 200-meter radius around him. Silence. He just wanted silence. He needed it. But everyone was so loud. Thought came to him. What if he just slept? Surely the voices couldn't reach his dreams. He laid himself down in bed and tried to sleep. He really did. But the voices were too loud. He held the pillow over his head, stuffed his ears with paper towels, but as the sun came up, the voices were still there, loud and clear, ringing around his head. After a few days of this unending madness, the pastor was completely sleep-deprived. He was terrified to leave his apartment, but he was desperate for some sleep. So, he decided to venture out of his apartment to go to the store and buy some sleeping pills. The sky was overcast, the wind still carrying the weight of the storm that had passed. People were out, running errands, chatting on porches. Everything looked normal, but now, he knew things about those people he shouldn't know. A young mother who was a regular at church on Sundays rocked her baby outside the corner store. She spotted the pastor walking across the street and smiled as she waved to him. All the while, through her smile, he could hear her say,
I hate this life. I hate this town. I hate this child.
The butcher in the corner store grinned as he wrapped a cut of meat.
If they knew where this really came from,
he thought smugly. They all looked normal. They smiled, they waved, but the pastor could hear them. He could hear their lies, their sins, their shame, their filth. It made his stomach turn. He finally made it inside the store, gripping the wooden basket like a lifeline. He wandered through the aisles trying to find the sleeping pills. His fingers twitched against the basket handle. Too many voices were being hurled at him. He could barely see straight. He knew who was cheating, who was stealing, who was hiding. And they smiled at him. The pastor dropped his basket and ran back home to pray. Bright and early the next Sunday morning, the church was full. The pews stretched long, packed with familiar faces, smiling, greeting one another, shaking hands, laughing softly at small jokes. They had no idea that the pastor heard all the things they didn't dare speak aloud.
I should have kissed him when I had the chance.
I buried the cash under the shed. If anyone finds it, I think I love her.
I think I hate him.
The words pushed into the pastor's skull like a sickness as he stepped up to the pulpit. He had done his best to look presentable, but he could not hide the sunken, dark circles underneath his red eyes. The room flooded with silent murmurs about his disheveled appearance. Crawling, shifting voices pulled at the edges of his mind. The pastor gripped the podium. His breath was shallow. His sermon was prepared. The words were in front of him. He could do this. All he had to do was read. That's all. Just read the words aloud. As he struggled to focus on the writing in his book, a thought that was his own struck him. A thought that felt like a calling. Was it possible the reason he was given this gift was to call out the sinners, to keep them from going astray? The pastor finally looked up. His gaze landed on a mother, a wife, a woman who had brought casseroles to every funeral, who had sung in the choir for years, who had always been a beacon of warmth to their church community. And before he could stop himself, his mouth opened.
Sarah,
He said softly. Her head lifted. He watched her pulse quicken in her throat.
do you still dream about leaving your husband and children?
People turned in their seats. A few heads snapped toward Sarah, wide-eyed, confused, uncertain. Sarah's face drained of color. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. A slow, sharp inhale cut through the room. Then, the pastor turned his head towards a man sitting in the back.
David,
He said. The man in the back sat up straighter.
the money you stole from your boss, does it make you feel rich?
As gasps rippled through the congregation, Sarah quickly excused herself from her stunned husband, who looked like he had been sucker punched, and stepped outside. Aside from having fervent thoughts about abandoning her family, Sarah had another secret. A big one. She was a high-ranking officer for the Foundation. Within moments of stepping outside, she pulled out her secure phone and made the call.
Major anomaly confirmed. Immediate containment required.
In the brief amount of time it took for the Foundation to arrive, the pastor managed to wreak havoc inside the church walls. One by one, he feverishly called out all of the unspoken sins of his parishioners. He felt he was doing God's work until someone's thought hit him like a giant sack of potatoes.
He's possessed.
Then another.
The devil must be speaking to him. How else could he know this about me?
The whispers grew louder, but they weren't in his head. Not anymore. Now, they were real. His entire congregation was yelling at him, out loud, with shock and disgust. They were afraid of the glassy-eyed madman who knew things he shouldn't know. The pastor clutched the pulpit as all the real voices shoved into his skull, along with everyone's unspoken thoughts. Everything screamed at him, multiplying, folding, collapsing into one deafening roar. He staggered. His vision swam. His wild, bloodshot eyes landed on the wooden cross hanging on the wall.
God help me.
He muttered out loud to himself as he grabbed the cross. He looked down at it and started laughing. It was a ragged, half-broken thing. And then, without warning, the pastor jammed the tip of the cross into his own ear. Parishioners watched in shocked silence as blood dripped down their pastor's neck. Gasps turned to screams. A woman fainted. A man dragged his wife toward the exit, their feet shuffling past the pews. The church door creaked open. They left, then another family left, and another, until the church was empty. The pastor stood alone, bleeding. Outside, the church parking lot became flooded with ambulances and police cars, except it wasn't paramedics and police officers that came out of those cars. They were Foundation agents. Inside, the pastor sat slumped in a pew, his fingers stained red, his mind rattling inside his skull like a caged bird. He barely noticed the figures approaching. A woman in a dark uniform knelt before him with a face that gave away nothing.
Sir, we need to take you to the hospital.
He blinked at her. She was lying. He heard it, clear as day. The pastor's lips parted. With a voice that was raw, barely above a whisper, he asked,
What's the Foundation? And why will it be thrilled with me?
For a moment, the agent didn't move. Then, without missing a beat, she lifted her hand and signaled to the others. The response was immediate. Two men in identical uniforms closed in, their movements quick, practiced, not the kind of men who hesitated. The pastor didn't resist as they lifted him onto the gurney, not because he couldn't, but because he could already hear them. "Strap him down. Keep his head still. Don't let him speak too much. We don't know how advanced he is yet." The restraints tightened around his wrists and ankles. The doors of the church groaned open behind them. Outside, the congregation had gathered, huddled in clusters, eyes wide, whispers stirring through the crowd. They parted as the agents wheeled the pastor forward, clearing a path. Their faces were lined with a mixture of concern, confusion, and fear. The pastor looked up at them, and he heard them.
Is he sick? Was it a breakdown? Maybe he really could hear us. Maybe we should pray for him?
Thank God he's leaving.
He wanted to tell them, wanted to say something, but the gurney lifted, the wheels rattled off of the pavement, and then he was inside the ambulance. The doors slammed shut, the locks clicked. There was a sharp prick at his arm, and as the world faded to black, the last thing he heard was,
"You won't be our problem much longer."
"Ever wished you could hear what people really think about you? No? Well, that's unfortunate, because SCP-015 is a contagious, brain-melting nightmare that forces telepathic abilities onto its victims. By the way, this insidious, mind-melting anomaly is of unknown origin, which is scientific shorthand for, we have no idea where the heck this came from, but it keeps ruining our day. And that pastor wasn't the first outbreak, and it wouldn't be the last. When the pastor was rolled into the Foundation facility, he was already far past saving. The moment the agents laid him on the examination table, they quickly saw his brain was humming like an overclocked radio, tuned into a station that never went quiet. But the Foundation had a protocol. Treatment Protocol 405 Alpha. It sounds fancy, but it isn't. Step 1. Pump the infected with a double dose of amnestics. Step 2. Put them into an induced coma for 3 days. Step 3. Hope for the best. The problem: this protocol only works in the early stages of infection, and the pastor was not in the early stages. But the agents, the doctors, the researchers didn't know that. They still thought they had a fighting chance. They didn't. Once the pastor released his final death scream, he infected everyone within a 200-meter radius, forcing the facility into a full lockdown. If someone catches SCP-015, the Foundation has one golden rule: stay far, far away. Victims are shuffled off to highly classified isolation zones in the middle of nowhere, presumably so they can spend their remaining days listening to the wind insult their life choices. Field teams encountering SCP-015 get one of two orders: dump them in a containment area, or, if they're in the late stages, terminate immediately and hope nobody within 200 meters got infected. If they did, congratulations, it's time for Treatment Protocol 405 Alpha. SCP-015 progresses with all the grace of a sledgehammer to the skull. For the first 2 days, nothing happens. You're fine. For now. By day 7, you start hearing thoughts, but only the worst ones about yourself. Soon, you're picking up every conscious thought within range. No filters, no pauses, no escape. By day 10, the range expands to 200 meters, turning every crowd into a psychic horror show. Sleep deprivation kicks in, and some victims start involuntarily broadcasting their own thoughts. Awkward if you have secrets. By week 2, your brain gives up on boundaries, and now you can hear unconscious thoughts, blinking, digestion, the whole nightmare. Dementia sets in. If restrained, most victims beg for death, while others try, and fail, to rupture their own eardrums just to make it stop. By day 28, your mind melts down completely. Seizures, comas, and the infamous death screams begin, your final mental broadcast before dying, which conveniently infects everyone within 200 meters, because if you suffered, why shouldn't everyone else? Then there's SCP-405-1, the lucky few who somehow survived the infection and now live out their days in a barren research facility in the desert, receiving the absolute minimum human interaction. Only 2 doctors are allowed to see them, and even they have to be doped up on tranquilizers before entering, because nothing says we care like medicating your staff just so they can tolerate a conversation. At some point, the Foundation thought it would be fun to stick all the SCP-015-1 survivors together in the same place, because what could go wrong with cramming a bunch of broken telepaths into the same building? Surprise, their personalities started merging. One picked up musical talent he never had. Another started instinctively field-stripping weapons despite having no military background. The conclusion? If you find another survivor, for the love of all things holy and unholy, do not send them here. SCP-005 appears out of nowhere, like that one bad idea you had at 2 a.m. It has no known origin, and its outbreaks have been happening for hundreds of years. Most outbreaks happen in schools, proving once and for all that high school really is the worst place on Earth. Only 2 cases have been recorded outside the US, one in Canada and one in Wales, which means either the rest of the world is better at handling pandemics, or the Foundation is really bad at covering up psychic mass casualties. SCP-005 is proof that mind reading isn't a superpower. It's a slow, screaming descent into madness. If you hear a voice in your head that isn't yours, run. If you suddenly know exactly what someone thinks of you, run faster. And if someone dies in your general vicinity and your ears start ringing, congratulations, you're next. The morning sun streamed through the window, casting beams of light that pierced the dusty, cluttered apartment. Remnants of a life filled with promise were bathed in the soft, ethereal glow. Faded photographs of various dig sites framed articles highlighting his amazing finds with headlines such as "Whiz Kid Archaeologist Unearths Lost Tomb. Archaeology's rising star makes history again." It was an archaeological record of an archaeologist's life. Now, he himself was an artifact, buried in the past. Years had passed since the glowing headlines. Now, the only stories written about him bore harsh titles like "From Prodigy to Pariah" or "Disgraced Digger's Downfall." A knock on the door caused the man to jolt up from the tattered sofa that doubled as his bed. He looked around the room in a panic. Another louder, more insistent knock soon followed.
Open the door,
said a thick Austrian accent. The man tiptoed, his breath catching with every step. Carefully, he looked through the peephole. In the hall stood a short, bald man, flanked by 2 burly men in dark suits.
I can see your eyeball, yeah?
He ducked down immediately, heart pounding. Who were they? Could this be a scheme by the landlord to scare him over unpaid bills? Rent wasn't due yet. Was it? What day was it, anyway?
You are the archaeologist who had the unfortunate, incident with the pharaoh's tomb, yeah?
The man rested his head against the door, his face etched with dread. Another journalist, hoping to extract one more humiliating quote. When would it end? Why couldn't they just leave him alone?
I want to offer you a job.
The man's eyes blinked wide open as he slowly raised his head. This must be some kind of joke. Yes, that must be it. This was all a cruel joke.
You were the best archaeologist in the world, and I only work with the best,
the little Austrian stated confidently.
Could you please open the door?
The little Austrian man waited, silent and patient. His 2 suited guards exchanged glances. Finally, the door clicked open. The bald man strolled in, followed by his muscle. They swept laundry off a chair, presenting it like a throne for their boss. The little Austrian gestured for him to sit. Nervously, the man licked his palms, smoothing down his hair as though to make a good impression, though that opportunity had long gone. Cautiously, he sat opposite his guest. The Austrian leaned forward, a spark of excitement dancing in his eyes. With a snap of the little Austrian's fingers, one of the hulking guards produced a briefcase and whipped it open to reveal a stone tablet.
What can you tell me about this?
The little Austrian inquired, passing the artifact to the man, whose eyes had lit up. He hadn't felt this alive in years. As the man examined the tablet, he explained that the carvings etched in the stone resembled 3,000-year-old petroglyphs that were found in the Boca Negra Canyon region of New Mexico. He feverishly pulled a topographical map from his bookshelves. As the man traced his finger over the modern map, his eyes darted to ancient lines of the tablet. See this squiggly line? That signifies mountains, and this symbol here might indicate water. Based on this, whatever you're searching for is likely buried here, he concluded, jabbing a finger at a valley in New Mexico. The little Austrian man smiled smugly. Good. You will go to New Mexico for me, yeah? The man eagerly nodded. Boris will accompany you, the Austrian stated. Boris, the human wall, stared silently. He will ensure you don't go pee-pee on my treasure, the little Austrian added with a chuckle. Within hours, the archaeologist found himself on a jet to New Mexico with Boris. Upon arrival, a fully equipped crew awaited them, already camped at the coordinates he'd provided. Their unsettling efficiency hinted at the stakes. The team soon unearthed a tomb entrance blocked by a massive stone slab. But this was no ordinary barrier. The stone bore an eerie fresco of a human figure, covered in white spots, as if warning of danger, or even a curse. The man felt an immediate pull, eager to decode the fresco's ominous warning, but he had only a moment to speculate before Boris, the lumbering oaf, began rigging the ancient stone with dynamite. What the hell do you think you're doing? The archaeologist protested. Boris ignored the man's outcries and struck a match. As the fuse burned, everyone ran for cover. They barely had enough time to brace themselves before a giant blast tore the ancient entrance apart. The archaeologist could only stare in shock as shards of history fell from the sky, raining down around him. The smoke barely cleared before Boris charged into the darkness of the tomb. The crew shared a few hesitant glances before following inside. They were here to explore. They were paid to explore, and that's exactly what they would do. They made their way down a narrow corridor, their footsteps echoing eerily through the tomb. Soon, they entered a vast cavern, flashlight beams skimming across the walls. Every inch was covered in ancient markings, human figures speckled with those same white dots.
Must be a disease of some sort, something that affects the skin,
the man mumbled, hoping Boris would hear him. Despite the warning, Boris pressed forward, unfazed, and the crew reluctantly followed. As the procession neared the center of the cavern, a crew member at the back stumbled. The stone beneath his foot sank into the floor with a low, grinding sound.
Watch your step,
the archaeologist whispered, his voice barely cutting through the heavy silence. Suddenly, a whooshing sound was heard, then another and another. A blood-curdling scream broke the silence. The archaeologist swung around with his flashlight, just in time to watch an axe violently swing past him, inches away from his face. Another axe swung behind him, grazing his arm. The archaeologist was in shock, frozen to the spot. Two large hands gripped his legs, pulling him down to the ground. It was Boris. As they lay on the ground, the deadly axes swung through the air. They watched as several of their crew members were cut down. "Get down!" the archaeologist shouted. It was too late. One of the crew was impaled by an axe. His torso split in two while he was still standing. It took a moment for his legs to give way, causing his body to crumple to the ground. Blood burst from the wound in a grotesque fountain, spilling and pooling around the severed remains. At last, after the chaos and bloodshed, it was over. Silence descended on the cavern. The remaining crew lay huddled on the floor, too shaken to move. Boris was the first to rise. He casually dusted off his suit and started heading deeper into the cavern. As the archaeologist looked at the carnage of his fallen teammates that littered the floor of the cavern, something snapped inside him.
"We can't leave them here,"
the man said defiantly. Boris stared at him with a calculating coldness, sharp enough to break stone. His hand slid into his suit, reaching for something, but the archaeologist, too fired up to notice, was oblivious.
"Did you hear me? I said we're not going any further until we—"
The gunshot was deafening. The crew member standing a few feet behind the man dropped to the ground. Boris had shot him in the face.
"What were you saying?"
Boris asked flatly. The archaeologist stared back in shock and horror. What had he gotten himself into? Boris placed his weapon back in his pocket. That's when the archaeologist saw it, a white lesion on his hand. Before he could even open his mouth, Boris cut him off.
"We keep moving,"
he growled and continued walking deeper into the cavern. The reluctant crew followed Boris as, unbeknownst to them, danger lurked beneath their feet again. "Everyone move slowly and—" the archaeologist warned, but it's too late. The plates clicked beneath the crew members' feet, and the walls came alive. A torrent of arrows exploded from the walls, each one finding its mark with lethal precision. The crew member screamed in agony as the arrows skewered him. Blood bubbled from his chest and neck. That's when the archaeologist saw it again. Another white lesion on the dead man's cheek, another on his arm. Dread washed over him. He looked down at the open palms of his hands and flipped them over. And there, just at the edge of his wrist, a small white lesion stared back at him. He lifted his sleeves, more lesions, his pant legs, even more.
Everyone check themselves,
the archaeologist shouted. The crew quickly complied, and to their horror, every one of them was infected with the strange disease. It had barely been 2 hours since their exposure. The infection spread fast. With eyes filled with terror, everyone was looking at their bodies and each other when Boris fired his weapon into the air. He stared at them blankly, without an ounce of remorse or fear.
keep moving,
he barked. No one could decide which fate was worse, the anomalous infection spreading rapidly through their bodies, or Boris and his trigger-happy fingers. With a collective sigh, everyone dropped their heads and followed Boris. As they were about to enter the third cavern, Boris stopped. He grabbed an unwitting crew member and shoved him to the front.
You lead the way,
he ordered the terrified young man. The young man looked back at the archaeologist, his face contorted with terror.
Just go slow and test every step,
the archaeologist offered reassuringly. The young man nodded but remained unconvinced. Cautiously, he began testing each step as he made his way through the cavern. The others followed closely behind, stepping only where he had. The going was slow and cautious, but they were still alive. That is, until the young man tested a step that made the floor shift beneath him. He froze, then tried stepping in another direction, but the ground gave way, opening into a gaping chasm beneath his feet. His screams reverberated off the cave walls as he plummeted into a pit of spikes, landing with a sickening crunch. The crew carefully stepped around the chasm and looked down at the horror below. The young man's body was jerking violently against the large spikes. The archaeologist grabbed Boris's arm.
We can't keep losing men like this.
Boris looked down at the archaeologist's hand, then back to his eyes. The archaeologist dryly swallowed and released his grip.
We leave after we find the treasure. Those are my orders. And yours,
Boris stated dryly, patting the outline of his gun through his suit jacket. With a collective grunt of surrender, the crew followed Boris further into the tomb.
My white spots are gone,
one crew member exclaimed suddenly. Everyone started to check themselves, and sure enough, by some strange miracle, everyone's lesions had vanished from their skin. But their joy was short-lived. A deep ache started to spread through their bodies. Every movement felt like their muscles were being set on fire. Crew members dropped to the ground, writhing in pain.
Leave them,
Boris grunted. Even he was having trouble keeping up his usual pace. What was happening to them? Were they dying? Maybe it was just dehydration after 24 hours without any water. Upon entering the vast chamber, everyone sighed in relief. They had made it. Before them lay gold and rubies, scattered among mounds of white cloth that seemed to have the shape of mummies? The crew had entered into the fourth and final cavern, a mass burial chamber. While the crew used their achy limbs to stuff their pockets with trinkets, the archaeologist looked around for Boris. He was in the center of the room, heading for a wooden box.
Let him have it,
muttered the archaeologist as he surveyed the burial chamber. His eyes landed on the walls, covered in primitive symbols depicting a story. The images depicted a meteorite crashing to Earth and entire groups of humans succumbing to the disease it carried. The pictographs showed humans with white spots covering their bodies, the spots fading, followed by drawings of people writhing in agony. Then, it looked like they were tearing their own flesh apart. The archaeologist gasped in alarm. His gaze shifted to another pictograph, one that unmistakably warned against removing the wooden box from its resting place.
Boris, no!
The archaeologist shouted. Boris had already lifted the box and opened it. With a look of dismay, he pulled out a small black rock. It was unlike any stone he'd ever seen. The entire cavern began to shudder violently. Debris and dust cascaded from above as a massive boulder dislodged, plummeting straight for Boris.
Look out!
The archaeologist shouted. Boris looked up. But it was too late. The boulder crashed down, crushing Boris. The black rock tumbled to the shaking ground beside the archaeologist. With the cave collapsing around him, the archaeologist was forced into action. He wasn't going to die there. He snatched the rock and bolted out of the cavern, his aching muscles screaming in protest. "Move, move, move!" he shouted over the roar of the collapsing cave. The remaining crew ran for the doorway as large rocks smashed down, catching those too slow to evade them. "We're almost there!" he shouted to the surviving crew. As they neared the narrowing cave entrance, the walls began to grind, shifting to seal off the cave forever. With a final, heart-stopping surge, the archaeologist and crew threw themselves forward. The entrance slammed shut with a deafening thud, just seconds after they escaped. The survivors collapsed to the ground, coughing out the dust-filled air. "We made it," the archaeologist whimpered, clutching the black rock tightly. The journey back was slow, each step heavier than the last. Their bodies ached, and something worse felt like it was taking hold. The sun had just begun to dip behind the horizon when they finally reached camp. The archaeologist staggered toward the tents, his hands trembling as he held onto the black rock. The others followed, their faces pale, their skin hanging loosely in places. Their movements were sluggish, their bodies racked with pain. The crew members who had stayed behind to tend to their equipment were the first to notice the change. Their eyes widened in shock as they looked at their returning comrades. We're infected," the archaeologist whispered under his breath. Even though no one dared to speak the words aloud, he could see the panic in their eyes already. Without a word, the survivors were ushered into the tents. The archaeologist sank to the ground, his head pounding, his body trembling as he leaned against the nearest tent pole. The air was thick with groans, the sounds of bodies twisting in pain. As the sun set over the camp, the agonized cries of the infected filled the night sky. The remaining crew sat around the campfire, faces grim as they picked at their food, appetite long gone. "I'll go check on them," one of the crew members volunteered after a long silence. She stood up and walked toward the nearest tent. The others stared straight ahead, eyes vacant, lost in thought. Then a voice broke the stillness. "What's that on your forehead?" One of the crew members froze as he stared at his friend. A white lesion was on his skin. As he reached up to touch it, his own gaze fell upon a similar lesion on the arm of the person next to him. One by one, the others checked themselves, and the horror spread like wildfire. Their bodies were now riddled with white lesions. Panic coursed through them. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream rang out. The crew members jumped to their feet, their hearts racing. They rushed to their tents, fear clawing at their throats. She stumbled out, her face pale and filled with terror. They looked inside. The archaeologist was inside, his body bent over, his hands clawing at his own skin. He was peeling away the flesh of his arm with a sickening, compulsive motion. The crew stood frozen in horror, unable to look away. Another scream tore through the night from one of the tents. Rushing over, they found more of their team, the ones who had escaped the caves, engaged in the same grotesque act, clawing at their own flesh. Some used their hands, others knives, and a few even wielded crude, blunt objects. "We need to get help," one crew member murmured, but they all knew it was futile. Without another word, the newly infected crew piled into a jeep. They needed to get to town, but they had to avoid causing panic. They couldn't let anyone know what had happened to them. Not yet. The jeep idled by the sidewalk as the crew member walked up to the house. Inside, the others watched with bated breath. They'd chosen the one person without visible lesions to make the approach. As he shuffled toward the door, his eyes darted back to the jeep, scanning for any danger. But the crew inside had shifted their attention to a small child they'd spotted nearby, playing in the garden. The little boy, with dirt-streaked cheeks and a curious glint in his eyes, was pushing a toy truck across the grass. At first, the crew thought nothing of it, but then, as the boy paused and looked up, he started walking toward the jeep. His small, bare feet shuffled closer and closer, his gaze never leaving the vehicle. The crew member closest to the window stiffened, his eyes locking with the boy's. "Did he just notice us?" one of them whispered, voice tight with unease. The others peered through the windows, holding their breath. The boy stopped directly in front of the Jeep, tilted his head slightly, and stared at them with wide, innocent eyes.
"Why do you guys look like leopards?"
the boy innocently asked. The crew exchanged panicked glances. "Go away," one of the crew said through the closed car window. She was scared the little boy would get infected. The boy shrugged and turned away from the Jeep. He wandered back toward the house, unconcerned, his toy truck still clutched in his hand. As the crew member hung up the phone, the little boy tugged at his mom's dress.
"Mom, why do those people outside look like leopards?"
he asked. The couple rushed outside. Their expressions shifted to disgust as they spotted the crew in the Jeep. But before they could react, the crew member who'd knocked darted back into the vehicle and they sped away. It didn't take long for the CDC to arrive at the camp, their convoy of vehicles kicking up dust as they rolled in. A team of experts in hazmat suits began examining the white lesions that now covered the Stage 1 patients. The lesions were striking, unnervingly uniform, an anomaly that suggested something unnatural at work. At first, the CDC specialists were cautious but hopeful. They suspected it could be Staphylococcus epidermidis, a relatively benign bacteria that can cause skin infections under certain conditions. It would explain the appearance of the lesions and the rapid onset of symptoms. But as the team moved deeper into the camp, to where the Stage 3 patients were housed, their hopes quickly evaporated. These patients were no longer simply sick. They were possessed. Some lay on the floor, clawing at their own skin like feral animals. Others stood, their hands and faces a grotesque mess of open wounds. A few tore at their flesh in jagged, frantic motions, driven by an unrelenting urge to destroy themselves. The sight was so horrific that even the hardened CDC officials recoiled. "This isn't staph," the lead specialist muttered under his breath. "This is something far more..." Before he could finish his thought, a scream shattered the air. In a blink, one of the Stage 3 patients lunged at him, the rage in their eyes unmistakable. Without warning, the rest followed. The infected tore at the hazmat suits, ripping through the material with alarming strength. Gloves were torn off, helmets yanked from their heads, leaving the CDC officials exposed and vulnerable. The CDC official had been right. This wasn't a simple pathogen. This was SCP-1121. SCP-1121 is an unknown amoeboid protozoa with a unique mutagenic ability that only activates when exposed to Staphylococcus epidermidis, a usually harmless bacterium found on human skin. When introduced to other organisms, SCP-1121 remains dormant. Its DNA shares genes with several insect species, but also contains genes not found in any known organisms. SCP-1121 does not reproduce naturally and does not require liquid to survive. Once SCP-1121 interacts with S. epidermidis, it mutates the bacteria into SCP-1121-1, a highly dangerous strain, before dying. This marks the beginning of the infection, which affects 100% of those exposed, even though S. epidermidis is normally harmless to healthy humans. SCP-1121-1 is resistant to all known antibiotics, and as of now, no cure exists for infections caused by Staphylococcus epidermidis excitiabilis. Infected subjects undergo a series of stages. Stage 1. Within 2 to 5 hours of infection, small white lesions appear on the skin, indistinguishable from a typical S. epidermidis infection, making misdiagnosis likely. Stage 2. About 24 hours after Stage 1, the lesions fade as the infection spreads deeper into the skin. SCP-1121-1 consumes the subcutaneous tissue, turning it into a viscous substance, causing excruciating pain. The skin becomes pale and slouches, resembling extreme weight loss. Stage 3. Patients begin to remove their skin, often using their hands, though some use tools. This process appears painless due to Stage 2 and is not a conscious action. When the underlying substance is exposed, victims become disoriented and hostile to the uninfected, making termination necessary before reaching this stage. SCP-1121-1 spreads quickly during stages 1 and 2, primarily through skin contact, but evidence suggests it can spread without direct contact. Hazmat suits are mandatory when handling any samples. Even after Stage 3, the infection persists in removed skin, with the bacteria remaining active for an unknown period. the danger posed by discarded skin remains an unresolved threat. According to Addendum 1121-A-01, SCP-1121 was unearthed during an archaeological dig in New Mexico. The archaeologist who first came into contact with the meteorite is now considered SCP-1121-1, Patient 0. Within 2 days, the infection spread from Patient 0 to the entire research team and several local residents. Although initial containment was handled by the CDC, the Foundation was contacted for assistance. The meteorite and Patient 0 were transferred to Biological Research Site 13, and a 10-kilometer radius around the dig site was cleared using Mark 77 bombs. The only known colonies of SCP-1121 were recovered from the meteorite. Mass spectrometer analysis, utilizing rubidium-strontium dating, determined the meteorite's age to be approximately 2.5 billion years. Further details on the exact circumstances surrounding the meteorite's arrival and Patient Zero's actions have been redacted. The boy and his father have spent the entire morning cleaning out the basement of the boy's grandfather, and the boy is absolutely exhausted. After yet another trip up those rickety cellar steps, the boy collapses onto the old living room couch. He can still hear his father puttering around downstairs, yelping and gasping in surprise every time he finds some memento of his childhood stashed among the debris. The boy sighs in annoyance. He doesn't really know his grandfather, so he doesn't feel any sense of loss as they tear through the boxes and bags in the basement. His father, however, insisted that the boy come along. "It'll be good for us to spend some time together," he said, and the boy suspects that his father is trying to deal with his own guilt about his strained relationship with the boy's grandfather. Perhaps he hopes that a day of father-son bonding is just what they need to make sure that they don't grow apart as his father did with his grandfather. The boy, however, doesn't think that cleaning out a musty old basement should qualify as effective father-son bonding. It's super boring. Worse, it turns out that the boy's deceased grandfather was an absolute hoarder who couldn't throw anything away, so the house is filled with all sorts of worthless garbage. The boy groans. His feet ache from traipsing all those stairs, and his back aches from carrying boxes. He thinks that he deserves a little break. He pulls a small handheld gaming console from the pocket of his hoodie and turns it on. "I'll just play for a couple minutes," he thinks to himself. "Then I'll go and help Dad some more. He won't mind if I take a short break to recover." The boy is sitting on the battered couch in the living room, playing the latest game on his handheld game console, when his father lurches into the room, carrying a gigantic white plastic box in his arms. "Check it out, sport," says his dad, a wide grin on his face. "Look what I just found in the basement." The boy briefly looks up from his game, resisting the temptation to roll his eyes at his father's annoying enthusiasm. His father is always getting excited for the dumbest things. As for that white box, the boy's never seen anything like it. "It's a Sega Dreamcast," the father says as he sets the white box on the living room floor and starts to untangle the mass of wires protruding from the back of the object. "This was my favorite video game system when I was a kid. I guess your grandfather just couldn't throw it away." "What else is new?" mutters the boy under his breath, but he bites his tongue as he watches his father studiously pick apart the knots in the tangled wires. Obviously, this hunk of junk has big sentimental value for his dad. Reluctantly, he slides off the couch and takes a seat next to his father on the floor, and together, the two of them set up the Dreamcast. "This had all the best games," continues his father. "Soul Calibur, Sega vs. Capcom. Oh, you're gonna love these." After a few minutes, his father has the wires plugged into the television, and the hand controllers ready. He nudges his son in the side with his elbow. "What do you say, champ? You ready to go mano a mano against your old man with some real video games? I'm about to school you in what real games are like, none of this silly, what's it called, Among Us junk like you played today." "It's not called Among Us, Dad," mutters the boy under his breath, but his father is already distracted pulling out old games. His father holds up a CD clamshell and pries it open, revealing a stack of silvery discs. "And look at this, all my old games, too." The boy tries to contain his boredom as his father rattles off a list of his favorite old video games, none of which are familiar to the boy. But eventually, his father reaches one disc that isn't familiar. "Eurythmics?" he says, squinting at the title embossed across the disc. "I don't remember this one. Wonder if your grandfather got it after I moved out." The father pauses as if overcome with emotion. The boy can imagine what his father is thinking. Did his grandfather buy this disc knowing how much his father loved his Dreamcast video games and hoping that maybe it could serve as a reconciliation present between them? That's exactly the sort of dopey, sentimental thing that his dad would think after spending all morning going through his grandfather's junk and reminiscing about what could have been. It looks like It's some sort of dance game? Prompts the boy, hoping to get his father to focus more on the game than his feelings of nostalgia and loss. Oh, right, says the father. I wonder why Grandpa had this when he didn't have a dance mat to connect. Maybe you just have to hit the control buttons in rhythm? He holds it up, the reflective disc shining brightly in the light of the overhead lamp, and the boy stares at the silvery disc in confusion. He's seen pictures of CD-ROM discs before, in old catalogs or even movies, but he's never seen one in real life. Who even uses discs like that anymore? Everything's just downloadable from the internet these days. What is that anyway? Asks the boy. A CD? This is not a CD, says his father, a slight edge of annoyance in his voice. The boy rolls his eyes. His father is always acting like he should be familiar with the outdated dinosaur technology of his father's youth. When will his dad learn? Just because this junk was important to his father when he was growing up doesn't mean that it's still important to the next generation. The boy holds his tongue, knowing that his father will probably start to sulk if he's reminded that time marches on, and that he's no longer as hip and with it as he likes to think he is. It's a GD-ROM, says his father, as if those words are supposed to mean anything to the boy. It stands for Gigabyte Disk Read-Only Memory. The boy has no clue what that means, and he hopes that his father isn't about to start a lecture on the different kinds of obsolete video game tech that he's suddenly decided are so vitally important for his son to know about. Luckily, his dad doesn't launch into a long-winded talk. He's too curious about what's on this mysterious disc to bother about that now. The father shoves the disc into the Dreamcast and settles down on the floor, gripping the controller with both hands. He's as excited as a kid in a candy store as he waits for the screen to boot up. The boy can't remember the last time that his father has been so eager for anything. But his excitement is short-lived as the first loading screen boots up. A cheerful, happy melody plays from the Dreamcast's speakers. The game title, Eurythmics, flashes on screen with options for 1 or 2 players listed below it. The father clicks over to 2 players, nodding for his son to pick up the other controller. The boy does as he's told. He can't imagine that this game is going to be any good. How old is it anyway? It's from when his dad was a kid, so that's all the way back in the 90s. This game might as well be 100 years old for all the boy cares. Immediately when the father chooses 2 players, the screen starts to glitch. The father yells in frustration, throwing his controller to the floor, but the boy sighs in relief. Thank God. At least now he won't have to pretend that this dinosaur game is anything good. I guess it's busted, says the boy, ready to turn away from the Dreamcast. But his father is insistent. No, it's just warming up. Watch, I'll fix this. He grabs his controller and tries to click on 2 players again. The screen only glitches more. Okay, just give me a minute, says the father. If this doesn't work, I'll just take the disc out and blow on it. I'm sure that'll work. The boy stares in confusion. It's a disc, not a cartridge. He doesn't see any way that blowing on it will have any effect. His father is just desperately grasping at straws, upset that his attempt at father-son bonding is being thwarted. Meanwhile, the cheerful loading screen music starts to fray, stuck repeating a single reverberating note that gradually degenerates into a tuneless cacophony. The pixels shimmy and wobble on screen, the image fracturing worse and worse as the father struggles to get the game console to respond to his commands. The boy watches the screen with disinterest at first, but then... Wait, what's going on? The more he stares at the screen, the more the random noises and broken graphics seem to form into something strange, something unknowable, but also something vaguely coherent? He blinks in confusion, his jaw dropping. He wants to call his father's attention to the bizarre formations on screen, but his father is too busy wrestling with the controller to notice the effect that he's having. Dad, look at the screen, says the boy, grabbing his father's shoulder and pointing. Huh? What is it? Did it work? What the... The father furrows his brow in confusion as he notices the wildly oscillating image on the TV screen for the first time. That doesn't look like a Dreamcast game at all. It's all broken, I think. The colors swirl around the screen in hypnotic, psychedelic patterns, and both father and son find themselves mesmerized, unable to look away. The boy is only vaguely aware of what computer graphics in the late 90s would have looked like, but he's reasonably sure that no underpowered 90s console could produce something this wild. The boy feels himself getting groggy, his brain fogging over as he stares at the wildly oscillating shapes on the screen. He feels like he could almost make sense of them if he just tried hard enough. It's like looking at one of those old-fashioned magic eye pictures, where the image only collapses into sense if you cross your eyes just right. But these strange swirls of color are something far beyond that. The swirls spiral into distinct vortex patterns, to the point that the boy might almost believe that he's looking at eyes. Yes, that's it, he's sure of it. He wants to panic as he becomes aware of the sensation of being watched. He feels like something beyond the screen, some malevolent entity, has somehow gained access to his world via this video game and is now watching him, sizing him up like a predator would size up its prey. He can't think of anything except those staring eyes with their rotating pupils. He wants to fall forward and disappear into the eternal nothingness of those awful eyes. Next to him, his father is silent. Like the boy, he's also enraptured by the infinite eyes on screen. "Oh my God," he mutters, so quiet that the boy can barely hear him. Do you see the eyes? It's your grandfather. He's watching us from beyond. I know that's him." The boy doesn't know whether his father is right. His father is probably just letting his guilt color his perception, because the boy doesn't feel like there's human intelligence on the other side of the screen. Whatever is out there, whether it's an alien mind from beyond human ken, or simply a computer program given awful sentience by a freak accident, it's not something that the boy can even begin to comprehend. He feels his mind shutting down in the face of that terror, as if his brain simply cannot take the strain anymore. He's only vaguely aware of his father hitting the floor in a dead faint. That should worry him. He should be frightened. He should want to rush to his father's side and try to shake him back awake. But his brain can't make his body respond. He feels his arms and legs getting weak and his eyelids getting heavy. It isn't long before his eyes drift shut, and the boy collapses onto the floor next to his father. Hours later, after the sun has already set, a car pulls up in front of the house, and the boy's mother gets out. She frowns as she looks at the front of the house, noting that the lights are on inside, and the front bay window casts a yellow square of light across the front lawn. The boy and his father must still be inside. They were supposed to have finished moving all that junk hours ago. She's tried calling both of their cell phones to remind them that they should be home for dinner, but neither father nor son has answered any of her calls or texts. She's not worried, though. They often ignore their phones when they get really involved in an activity, and she suspects, rightly, that her husband probably found some childhood relic in the basement that's distracted him from getting the task done. She's willing to bet that the two of them probably haven't even finished cleaning the basement. She walks up the garden path and puts her hand against the doorknob. The door creaks open. She frowns. Nothing sinister about that, right? Of course, they wouldn't bother to lock the door if they were still working inside, right? Nevertheless, she feels a strange chill run up her spine. Why is she suddenly so nervous? She pushes open the door and fumbles for the light switch. The foyer is dark, as is most of the house. The only light comes from the living room, and she can see that something within is throwing dancing shadows against the far wall. She hears a toneless, mechanical drone emanating from the living room. Are they watching television? That would be just like them to turn on the tube and completely lose track of time. But what TV show would make an awful din like that? She storms into the living room, ready to read her husband and son the riot act. But then, she stops dead in her tracks. Her husband and son are here all right, but they're lying in crumpled heaps upon the floor, staring glassy-eyed at the ceiling. She screams as she rushes to her husband, praying that she's wrong, that they're just playing a prank on her, that they just got tired and lay down on the floor to rest. But as she presses her finger against his wrist, she feels that he's cold and lifeless. He's dead, and has been for hours. Her son, pale and cold and lifeless, lies next to him. She looks up, her gaze connecting with the television screen. It continues to flash vacillating images in an erratic loop, nonsense static that she can't understand. But if she didn't know better, she might almost feel like it's watching her. The strange, swirling eyes stare back, unblinking and eternal. What started as a misguided attempt at father-son bonding time ended in tragedy, because those GD-ROM discs weren't ordinary discs at all, but rather instances of what the SCP Foundation has dubbed SCP-015-IT. SCP-015-IT is a set of 7 modified GD-ROM discs manufactured by the Sega Corporation. SCP Foundation agents have been able to pinpoint the date of manufacture of each disc sometime between 1997 and 1999. The GD-ROM was a proprietary format originally used for the Dreamcast video game console, developed by Yamaha as an answer to fighting the piracy that was rampant among more standard compact discs, and to offer increased storage capacity without the expense of the fledgling DVD-ROM. The GD-ROM seemed promising at the time, as it had a storage capacity of a full gigabyte, 42% higher than conventional CDs. Ultimately, though, GD-ROMs failed to catch on and were quickly outpaced by DVD technology.
The 7 disks in the SCP Foundation storage are visually indistinguishable from non-anomalous GD-ROM disks, except for their serial numbers. The serial numbers give some indication of the mystery behind their origin, revealing that they were created by Sega's enigmatic R&D-0 division during the height of the 90s console wars. It is estimated that R&D-0 produced a total of between 60 and 100 experimental GD-ROM disks similar to those in SCP-015-IT, but the rest of the production line is currently unaccounted for. Each SCP-015-IT GD-ROM contains one Sega video game, including Sonic Adventure, Sega Rally Championship 2, House of the Dead 2, Sega Bass Fishing, Godzilla Generations, Virtua Fighter 3 TB, and an unreleased 3D rhythm game by the name of Eurythmics. But the result when anyone tries to play any of these different games is always the same. When an instance of SCP-015-IT is fed into a Dreamcast console, it causes the optical disk drive's reader to move in unpredictable ways, accessing disk data seemingly at random. At first, the game boots up as expected and seems perfectly ordinary, but when a player progresses past the loading screen, the game very quickly becomes illegible. Sprites and assets blend into each other in asymmetrical chunks, maps recursively render onto other maps, and soundtracks transform within seconds into incessant, oscillating noise. A perfunctory glance at the results seems like absolute chaos, but eventually, observers will start to notice patterns within the noise. These eventually coalesce into complex renderings of landscapes and figures wildly inconsistent with the content of the original games, and computationally impossible for 1990s-era video game hardware to render. Repeated tests by SCP Foundation agents have turned up a recurring motif in the images shown by SCP-015-IT, spinning disks that resemble malevolent eyes. SCP agents hope that research into R&D-0 and the man responsible for the disk's creation might help to explain the reason or the purpose of SCP-015-IT. R&D-0's former lead hardware programmer Ken Matsuya has said on record that the team encountered numerous problems in implementing the disk's anti-piracy encryption measures. The result was unplayable. Frustrated by this failure, Sega ordered that the encryption project be abandoned and the prototype disks quietly destroyed. However, it does not appear that Sega's orders were carried out to the letter. Matsuya himself rescued 7 of the disks, hoping to learn more about the issue on his own time, and it's possible that other disks not currently known to the Foundation also survived. With the help of improvised Sega hardware, Matsuya spent the next 4 years trying to understand the cause behind the disk's erratic behavior. Notebooks recovered from his apartment contain numerous sketches of the disk-generated visuals, depicting fractal combinations of landscape and figures seemingly drawn from places outside of the game data themselves, and stylized spinning disks in the shape of eyes. Matsuya himself met a strange and untimely end when he was found dead from a heart attack in his apartment in August 2003. Stranger still, an autopsy revealed that large portions of his brainstem and limbic system were missing. His death puzzled authorities since there was no evidence of any human, or even non-human, intrusion. Matsuya had apparently loaded one of the SCP-015-IT instances in his possession into his home Dreamcast before his death, because the distinctive psychedelic visuals were playing on his television screen at the time that his body was discovered. Foundation agents suspected that the visuals might have some connection with Matsuya's death, leading to the disk's subsequent classification and containment, but intensive tests on SCP-015-IT by Foundation personnel have failed to shed any light on the situation. Both the disk's strange behavior and Matsuya's death remain complete mysteries. Is SCP-015-IT a gateway into some other dimension, and its bizarre images a signal from another world? Could it be a message from beyond the veil? Or is it all just due to a simple computer glitch, and Matsuya's death just a freak coincidence? Whatever the case, the Foundation is doing its best to uncover the truth. SCP-015-IT has been given the object class Safe, but should be stored in conditions comparable to those needed to keep non-anomalous disks viable. All 7 instances of SCP-015-IT are kept in a climate-controlled Safe class storage locker at Site-15. Long-term tests lasting over an hour should only be conducted on reinforced, modified hardware to prevent disk deformation or explosion.
The fire alarm is blaring, shrill and unrelenting, but the sound only enrages the 6 monsters further. The plant can feel them closing in, pounding down the corridor like wild animals. Abandoned crash carts fly, vacant wheelchairs topple, and anything in their path is smashed aside without hesitation. They're driven by nothing but raw, feral instinct that emanates from under that mass of tumorous flesh. It's hard to believe They used to be human. The plant slams against a set of double doors, but they don't open, the weight of something on the other side refusing to budge. There's empty hospital beds and disconnected EKG machines piled up to form a barricade. A stand for an IV drip is wedged between the door's handles. Frantically, the plant bangs on the door, slamming his fists against the surface until they start to hurt. On the other side, he sees frightened doctors, nurses, and patients through the window, cowering and keeping well back from the door. He yells, insisting he's not one of those things. He hasn't been infected. He desperately shows them the clean skin of his hands and arms, in the hopes that'll be enough to convince them. His plea for entry seems to work, as one of the orderlies starts shifting parts of the barricade to grant him entry. Just as the doors start to open slightly, one of the creatures comes racing around the corner at the far end of the corridor behind the plant. He screams to the orderly clearing the obstructions on the other side, pushing at the doors, though the pile of beds and the IV stand prevent them from opening. In desperation, the plant forces himself through the small gap between the two doors, despite the pain of feeling both doors crushing his ribs. With another yell and a sickening crack, he makes it through, just as the monster slams into the double doors, causing them to buckle. Hurriedly, the orderly and others in the room start pushing the barricade back into place. The creature's arm reaches through the two doors, preventing them from shutting. Over in a nearby corner, the plant is cowering, doubled over in pain, crying horrified tears. Carefully, the plant lifts up the sleeve of the stolen lab coat he wears. On his arm are lesions, marks he remembers seeing on the patients he infected, including the one trying to break in. The mandate from the corporation is simple: infiltrate the hospital under the assumed identity of an ordinary doctor and administer the provided samples to patients on different wards. Treat the place like your own private lab, they tell their plant. Move without any pattern so you aren't noticed, and make sure you monitor the data closely. They haven't explained exactly what they're hoping to get out of this test, but the reason they're keeping it such a secret is clear enough. These patients are being used as guinea pigs for something big. As for what, the plant doesn't know. He isn't being paid to ask questions, just produce results. After a month or so of working at the hospital under his new identity, the first hermetically sealed delivery from the corporation arrives. He brings the sample to work, chooses a patient at random, and takes the sample out, administering it to the patient while they sleep. It's a nasty one, measles, but luckily for the patient, they'd already had their shots. The process continues like this for months. Getting sick while in hospital is hardly uncommon, allowing the plant to work undetected. Then, one day, the corporation sends something that they make sure to point out is of the utmost importance. They won't explain further, referring to this mysterious sample only as Sample BEA. Unlike the others, the plant is given different instructions: expose as many patients as possible to Sample BEA, preferably those in close proximity to each other. Slipping back into the hospital during the shift change, when day staff are clocking out and night staff are still getting settled, the plant moves quickly, quietly. He heads for a quiet ward, one that won't be checked for a while. 6 sleeping patients, 6 guinea pigs, 6 monsters. Since the quarantine was lifted, SCP Foundation immunologists and other researchers specializing in anomalous infections have examined the recovered samples and determined the exact cause of the outbreak. The resultant discovery has been designated SCP-015-IT. Close examination of cell samples yielded little results, with many of the recovered samples being human cells that had been exposed to various common treatable or even curable diseases. Among the evidence requisitioned by the Centers for Disease Control from the redacted Pharmaceutical Corporation was one sample that Foundation analysts considered to be abnormal. Under a microscope, the sample appeared to be a cluster of undifferentiated human skin cells. In this context, the term undifferentiated is used to refer to any cells or tissue matter that don't possess specialized or mature structures or functions. When cross-referenced with medical analysis of various other forms of undifferentiated cells, Foundation researchers quickly noted that the cluster of cells they had found shared a majority of physiological traits with most forms of cancer. And in terms of cancer, undifferentiated cells can grow and spread rapidly. With the sample identified and suspected to be anomalous in nature, the SCP Foundation immediately ordered a series of thorough containment and testing procedures. All experiments were to be conducted within sterilized environments, where pathogen levels and potential contaminants could be strictly monitored to prevent cross-contamination or the risk of a secondary outbreak. Initial testing involved extracting cells from the anomalous material, now formally catalogued as SCP-015-IT, and placing them under controlled conditions designed to encourage cellular growth and observe any abnormal development. Anomalous biologist teams worked on cultivating SCP-015-IT cell structures, growing test samples of the anomalous cells while keeping them isolated from living tissue in order to observe their behavior. They already knew of SCP-015-IT. What they were seeking to establish was whether it would act like cancer, growing and dividing at an uncontrollable rate, attacking healthy cells by interfering with the bodily signals that normally regulate their growth. By placing cells from SCP-015-IT into controlled cell culture environments, Foundation research teams quickly confirmed a troubling pattern. The cells behaved remarkably like aggressive cancerous tissue. If the cells were provided with an adequate and regular source of nutrition, they would continue to grow until they split off and multiplied. It appeared, at the rate of mitosis occurring, that these anomalous cells could potentially grow indefinitely if they had constant access to nutrition, like if they were found to have occurred within living human tissue. An emergency lockdown of Foundation site, Redacted, was triggered shortly after the first few weeks of testing concluded. An unknown member of research personnel gained access to the labs where SCP-015-IT cell cultures were under examination. It remains unclear as to why this researcher chose to forcibly enter a restricted, controlled environment area without taking the adequate safety measures. Any communications they might have received prior to the attempt have been lost, as the hard drive to their personal computer was found to have been dissolved using acid, along with the SIM card of their cell phone. A subsequent investigation by the SCP Foundation's Office of Internal Affairs concluded that this individual may have accepted a bribe from the Redacted Pharmaceutical Corporation, or another anomalous group of interest, to recover samples of SCP-015-IT and deliver them to this unidentified benefactor. The occurrence of this attempted theft of dangerous anomalous material and the subsequent lockdown, however, led to the discovery of SCP-015-IT's primary anomalous properties. The Foundation biology teams assigned to the cell culture tests found themselves trapped within Site Redacted's biochemical testing wing, as Foundation protocol required a minimum of a 72-hour quarantine to prevent the spread of any anomalous pathogen. This time was used by the researchers to examine what had happened to SCP-015-IT's would-be thief. They quickly learned, just from observing the testing labs, that SCP-015-IT was contagious. Despite its cellular behavior resembling that of a cancer, the anomaly was able to pass from human to human and could even infect some select animal species. This was observed when some mice, kept for testing purposes, were freed from their enclosure in the lab and came into close contact with the remains of the unidentified member of personnel infected with SCP-015-IT. Researchers observed that SCP-015-IT did not appear to function as an airborne pathogen, though all personnel were still required to wear hazmat suits and rebreathers for the duration of the quarantine. Instead of being breathed in, SCP-015-IT spread via direct physical contact. Later close examination would reveal that when an uninfected individual touched the surface neoplasms, also known as tumors, of an infected subject, the condition would begin affecting them too. This led to some of the researchers referring to the phenomenon as the cancer plague. The first symptom of an SCP-015-IT infection occurs within the initial few hours of contact. This will present itself in the form of skin lesions that begin to emerge in groups of between 3 and 5, located at the point of infection. These lesions are, in humans at least, typically the size of a dime piece, only around 2 centimeters in diameter. Within 12 hours after the first of these lesions appear, the infection will cause tumors to develop within the infected subject's brain. MRI scans conducted on later test subjects confirmed the presence of neoplasms in every person exposed to SCP-015-IT. However, there are no accompanying neurological symptoms brought on by these growths. The headaches, seizures, persistent nausea and vomiting, drowsiness, difficulty with vision or speech, problems with memory or shifts in personality that are all commonly associated with neoplasms in the brain are non-existent in SCP-015-IT infectees at this stage. This makes early detection difficult without the use of magnetic resonance imaging. The condition then worsens over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours. Human test subjects that the SCP Foundation exposed to SCP-015-IT following the lockdown gave more of an insight as to what had occurred to the body of the unidentified thief that was infected.
The skin lesions present on an infected subject's skin begin to not only rapidly increase in size, but in number also, emerging and growing all over the body. These lesions can lead to substantial swelling within the surrounding tissue, and many subjects that have been interviewed at the various stages of their infections have reported that this gives them severe pain. The Foundation was able to determine that by leaving this pain untreated, a subject will become physically debilitated to the point of being no longer able to move. Towards the time of a full 48 hours following an SCP-015-IT infection, patients affected by the cancer plague will begin to exhibit a number of neurological symptoms that have been attributed to an increased number of neoplasms. These will begin to manifest throughout the subject's lymphatic system, the network of organs like the lymph nodes, lymphatic tissues, and vessels that maintains the balance of bodily fluid levels and helps defend against infection. The neurological symptoms exhibited by each infectee that contracts SCP-015-IT have varied on a case-by-case basis. Foundation experts in anomalous neurology have examined scans taken of every known test case of an SCP-015-IT infection and have determined that symptoms are likely dictated by the area of the brain contaminated by the invasive cancer plague cells. Human test subjects who were found to have a higher level of tumors within their hippocampus and other structures within the temporal lobe were more likely to experience memory impairment. Meanwhile, those for whom their amygdala, the area of the brain responsible for emotional processing, was more affected, exhibited signs of altered emotional responses, in particular when the infection was explained to them. One D-class member with neoplasms in their amygdala seemed to suffer a psychological snap upon being told that the Foundation had given them an infectious form of cancer. They began laughing hysterically to such an extreme degree that it induced vomiting and permanent vocal cord damage. Other subjects have reported an inability to focus their attention or exhibited disorganization with their speech as a result of the neurological impact from SCP-015-IT. Hallucinations have occurred for some human test subjects, while others experience states of euphoria, megalomania, sociopathy, or even a complete catatonia as the neoplasms stack within their lymphatic system and brain. Within 47 to 49 hours after the initial infection, patients will no longer experience any pain relating to their symptoms, with any induced by the lesions or neurological pain such as headaches will cease at this point. At random during their human testing trials, the Foundation selected members of D-class personnel to be submitted for treatment to potentially mitigate the effects of their rapidly forming neoplasms. Attempts were made via radiation therapy and chemotherapy, with the latter being observed to kill some of the anomalous SCP-015-IT cells. However, its effects were minimal. A high-dose mixture of mitoxantrone, irinotecan, and dacarbazine is believed by Foundation biologist teams to be able to treat SCP-015-IT shortly after exposure, but it is unable to effectively counteract the cancer plague once the disease has established itself within a human body. It remains unknown whether there is an ideal time frame to administer chemotherapy after an SCP-015-IT infection. Estimates state that if this doesn't occur within the first few minutes of contact with another infected subject, then there is little chance a patient can be saved. Within 5 days, the symptoms of an SCP-015-IT infection will once again worsen. If the mass of anomalous cancer cells are allowed to reach a biomass threshold of approximately 3,100 pounds, then they will overwhelm the infected host. Death of the human subject occurs at this point, and if the cancer plague is not transferred to a new host, the cells will continue to posthumously rapidly grow and spread. These cells will become highly aggressive, consuming any remaining usable biomass from their host's corpse. If they are unable to consume enough resources, the SCP-015-IT cells will begin to die, unless they are contracted by another living host. However, an additional anomalous effect of the plague was observed by the research teams trapped in the lockdown. The body of the intended thief was kept within the testing lab, having seemingly expired shortly after becoming infected, but before this infection was discovered, at which point the lockdown was initiated. Dying while the mandatory Foundation quarantine was still in effect, the mass of cancer cells within the expired corpse and the nearby lab mice that were also infected continued to build. After reaching a certain threshold, researchers noticed something strange occurred within the dead host. It started moving. Electromagnetic phenomena appears to occur when this mass threshold is crossed, and while the exact mechanism of this electromagnetic manipulation is not fully understood, it seems to emanate from the infected subjects themselves. Naturally, when this occurred during the site-redacted lockdown, research teams trapped inside with the infected cadaver and accompanying rodents carrying SCP-015-IT began to panic.
It appeared that the electromagnetic emanations occurring within the infected subjects facilitated some kind of shared communication between multiple hosts carrying the plague. Coordinating their movement through their neoplasms, the corpse and infected mice within the lab began to move and act as one singular entity, spread throughout several bodies. Frantically, the Foundation biological research teams began attempting to flee from the biochemical testing wing, but were unable to leave while the mandatory lockdown was still in effect. As they pleaded with high-ranking Foundation personnel via radio for the lockdown to be lifted, the infected entity was able to break free from the lab. The creature was observed via security surveillance cameras. Analysis of its behavior has reached a conclusion that its intelligence is based on a gestalt of the remaining brain tissue within the SCP-253 hosts. In this case, there was little left of the human subject's brain, supplemented only by the infected mice that were now forming part of the same entity. It was highly reactive to stimuli and animalistic in nature, causing it to lash out defensively when members of the research team trapped with it attempted to fight the creature. It has since been hypothesized that an infected entity of this nature could possess an almost human level of intellect if enough SCP-253 hosts were able to be combined using this method. Research on the discovery of SCP-253 seems to suggest that the more unsettling incidents that took place at Redacted Hospital were the result of manifestations like this. Research into testing the exact biomass threshold that causes these manifestations in human subjects has been denied by the Foundation's Ethics Committee. However, a decision on whether or not biomass can be tested within controlled cell culture samples is still pending. Until such a time that the Foundation is able to jam the electromagnetic manipulation that creates one of these late-stage infection entities, however, the manifestation of any conjoined SCP-253 creatures is to be prevented at all costs. Samples of the anomalous SCP-253 cells are to be handled with the utmost care. The SCP Foundation is still awaiting a time when more effective cancer treatments are released to the public, as more common usage will allow them to counteract any future infections of the cancer plague. Experiments involving the use of SCP-427 to counteract SCP-253 have been approved. SCP-427 is an anomalous locket that can regenerate any and all forms of bodily damage, as well as healing infections and improving the efficiency of all bodily systems of the person wearing it. However, continuous use of SCP-427 causes the user to become a large, violent mass of flesh. Initial testing results were not encouraging, as despite SCP-427's effectiveness at treating other forms of cancer, it seemed to accelerate the growth rate of tumors in SCP-253 infectees rather than reducing them. All subjects were terminated before they could approach the critical threshold that would trigger a creature manifestation. Requests to allow human patients beyond this threshold are still pending. At present, SCP-253 poses a clear and ever-present threat to human life. The Foundation has enacted Level 4 biosafety protocols in order to maintain the safety of humanity and prevent a potential massive-scale outbreak of the cancer plague. All research involving SCP-253 samples is to be conducted at Site Redacted, given that this is one of the most geographically isolated Foundation facilities. Incineration and irradiation protocols can be swiftly enacted here, and the site does not possess a diverse enough biosphere to allow for contaminations to spread easily. Should any of the following events occur, then sterilization protocols will be enacted. If there is a communications blackout at Site Redacted that lasts longer than 48 consecutive hours, if there is disruption to power distribution systems for longer than a single minute during any experiments involving SCP-253, should an abnormal rise in temperatures occur, higher than a change of 11 degrees Fahrenheit, or a rise in humidity levels to 90% relative humidity, then the site will be sterilized. This will also occur if any unusual electromagnetic phenomena are detected during testing with SCP-253. At the conclusion of any tests, subjects that have been exposed to SCP-253 are to be disposed of. Their remains are also subject to sterilization protocols. Any researcher who leaves the grounds of Site Redacted must undergo 2 weeks of mandatory chemotherapy treatment in case of accidental infection, followed by a further 15-day quarantine.
You're on your way home from work after having just finished working a double shift. It's late, and the interstate is completely abandoned. No cars visible either in front or behind you. It's only about a 20-minute drive, but you know you're going to struggle to stay awake, even in this old beater that shakes and rattles as it travels down the long, straight road. The rattling causes a piece of tape to fall off of the gauge cluster, revealing a lit check engine light beneath. You grab the tape and put it back over the light, covering it once again. There, good as new. You turn on the radio, and it comes to life for just a moment before dying. You slap the radio and it blinks to life for just a second before dying again. You're about to slap it again when you notice lights in your rearview mirror. And more than just a pair of headlights. It's a whole wall of lights. They're getting closer, and quickly too. Before you know it, they look like they're barreling down on you. But then, they suddenly go black, blinking out of existence. Did that trucker just turn off his lights, you think? You have no time to dwell on the thought, because the sound of an explosion suddenly causes you to scream in fright. It sounds like lightning has struck just inches from your car. The inside of your car suddenly lights up with fire and smoke. Has your engine exploded? What's going on? No, it's not coming from you, it's coming from next to you. You don't know where it appeared from, but next to your car is now a massive semi. At least, you think it was a semi. The smoke is so thick it makes you cough, and you quickly can't see. You lose control of the car and slam on the brakes, but you can feel yourself going off the road. As the smoke finally clears up inside of your car, you can see the moon. It's at this moment that you realize you're no longer right side up as the car flips and tumbles through the air. You open your eyes to find that you're still buckled into your seat. You release the seatbelt and drop to the roof of the car. You crawl out to find that your car slid to a stop upside down, several meters from the road. You look around, and far off in the distance, you can see it. The semi that ran you off the road, driving at an almost impossible rate of speed off into the night. You look back at your car, which is completely totaled, and wonder what you're going to do now. It's late the next morning when you finally get back home. The police did not seem to believe your story about the magically appearing semi-truck causing your single-car accident, but they did at least give you a ride back home after administering a sobriety test. You enter your small studio apartment and look around at the sparsely decorated room, wondering how you're going to pay rent next month if you can't get to your job. You go to the fridge and open the door, but there's nothing inside except for a carton of milk that's well past its expiration date. You open it and take a whiff, but this is too far gone even for your state of desperation. You close the fridge and lean on the door, trying to figure out what you're going to do. You're so deep in thought that you barely notice the mail being pushed through the slot in your door. You decide to go pick it up, even though you know it will only be bad news. And you were right. Bills, bills, and more bills. First, second, and final notices. You wonder if you've ever had a piece of good news show up through that slot in your door. What's this, though? The last piece of mail is a battered and folded envelope that looks like it's been used and repurposed many times. It feels thick and heavy, but there's no information on it at all. It's completely blank. You open the envelope, and your eyes light up. Inside is money. It's a stack of crinkled old bills, different denominations, all in a random order, but there's a lot of them. There must be over $1,000 here. And there's something else, too. A note. You unfold the creased and dirty piece of paper to see a simple message that looks like it was hastily written in black crayon. All the note says is, "Sorry about last night. Hope this helps, compadre." You flip the note over and look in the envelope again, but there's nothing else other than the wad of cash. The apology note may have been unsigned, but you weren't the first to receive something like it, and you would be far from the last. The SCP Foundation, though, knows exactly who sent it. This was a message from SCP-3899, also known as the Night Hauler. SCP-3899 is a black Peterbilt 379 semi-trailer truck with an attached trailer, but as you no doubt have determined, this is no ordinary truck. SCP-3899 has the anomalous effect of appearing seemingly at random upon stretches of highway within the continental United States, and usually at a considerable distance away from any other motorists. The truck will manifest already in motion, traveling within roughly 3 kilometers per hour of the posted speed limit, but it will not stay at this speed. Once SCP-3899 has appeared, it will almost immediately begin accelerating, and the speeds it can reach are truly staggering. Despite appearing to be a normal truck, SCP-3899 is able to reach impossibly fast speeds, and it's been observed traveling at over 420 kilometers per hour, or 267 miles per hour. As SCP-3899 flies down the road, it will attempt to avoid other vehicles and roadside objects, and has even been shown the ability to displace itself across short distances, which it seems to mostly do in order to avoid collisions with vehicles. SCP-3899 will disappear and then immediately appear somewhere else, though always within 300 meters of its last location. This reappearance will be accompanied by a thick cloud of dense, black smoke that lab tests have revealed to consist of a mixture of diesel fuel combustion byproducts, volcanic ash, and trace amounts of unidentified human blood. The anomalous truck will only appear at night and will demanifest completely once it encounters direct sunlight, or if it causes an automotive accident, which it has done plenty of times. In one particular incident, undercover SCP Foundation agents working within the Virginia State Department of Transportation became aware of reports of a large black truck appearing on a particular stretch of interstate that had caused multiple accidents. They were able to track down and locate one of the victims of these incidents, a woman named Martha Lewis, who they soon brought in for questioning under the guise of it being a police investigation. The agents questioned Martha on her experience, and she explained her own interaction with the black semi. She said, "It's all still clear in my head. I'm driving down I-64 on my way home and the sun had just gone down. There's no other cars and I'm about to take my exit when out of nowhere this huge truck just appears right next to me. There's a bunch of smoke, like it was on fire or something, and the sound was like a bolt of lightning had just struck right next to me. It all happened so fast. All the smoke clouded my windshield, and before I could really process what was happening, I was plowing right through a concrete divider and into some trees. I think I passed out. When I came to, there were paramedics and cops. They took me to the hospital." The agents asked if anything happened after that, and she said there was one other odd thing. When she left the hospital and went home, there was a letter waiting for her, but it didn't have a return address. Inside was a large amount of U.S. currency in a random assortment of denominations, with many of the bills appearing wrinkled and worn. There was a note in the envelope, too, which read, "I'm sorry, didn't mean no harm. For the damages, get y'all a new rig and drive on." Later Foundation analysis of the document revealed that the note was written with a piece of charcoal on non-anomalous notebook paper. Now you're probably asking yourself the same question that the SCP researchers had. Just who is the driver of SCP-3899 that apparently wrote this odd note and also paid for the damages they caused? The operator of the truck, which has been designated as SCP-3899-1, is a very mysterious figure. Observers who have been able to get a brief glimpse inside of the truck as it moves past them at a rapid speed have described the driver as looking only like a silhouette of a slightly overweight male wearing the type of headwear that is typically referred to as a trucker hat. Some reports have also alluded to the presence of what appears to be smoky, tentacle-like appendages within the cab, though all further efforts to determine the exact physical characteristics of 3899-1 have failed, as the truck has proved resistant to any kind of outside scanning equipment. Most of what is known about the driver has come in the form of direct communication, though not in the form of interviews or any other sort of face-to-face interaction. No, while SCP-3899-1 has never been willing to stop and have a discussion with Foundation agents, it does seem more than willing to speak with anyone and everyone in its immediate vicinity over Citizens Band, or CB radio, which is a type of shortwave person-to-person communication system that is popular with many long-haul truckers. In one particular instance, an SCP Foundation helicopter happened to be traveling above a stretch of road where SCP-3899 appeared. An agent within the helicopter began communicating with the anomalous trucker, first asking for their call sign, to which SCP-3899-1 replied,
"I'm the Night Hauler and I'm coming in hot. I know y'all can feel this speed."
After adjusting their volume to compensate for 3899-1's loud response, the agent asked if the entity could explain where they came from. 3899-1 answered with,
"I roll with the wind. My wheels sing sweet love to the blacktop. I'm filling y'all's veins with road salt and exhaust and the smell of burning rubber. Ain't no bother where I'm from. We all gotta live for the ride and die for nothing."
"I see," the agent responded, before asking, "Are you hauling anything in particular?" SCP-3899-1 came back with,
"Ain't you listening, girl? You seeing this? What I got is pure rattling salvation. 18 wheels at a time. When y'all's roads is choked, when the ways is blocked and y'all's speed is all dead and gone, I'm dropping this load and we'll all be drinking gas and breathing smoke."
The agent didn't understand, though, and asked again who they were and what they wanted. 3899-1 replied,
"This is for the souls of the road, for the long nights and dead engines, and everyone trying to put that horizon under their wheels. I am the roar of hot iron. I am screaming freedom. I am the death of all barriers. This rig ain't got no quit, honey. I do not stop. Can you feel the rumble? Can you see the fire and smell the burn? I know you can. I can taste your heart, and I know you want to fly apart with me.
When the agent began to answer in the affirmative that they could indeed, quote, feel the rumble, seemingly caught up in the excitement of SCP-3899-1's proclamation, the investigation was quickly halted and the helicopter broke off from its pursuit. Following this incident, the potential memetic influence of communicating with 3899-1 is under investigation. SCP-3899, being currently uncontainable by any conventional means, has been classified as Keter. Upon reports of it manifesting, all CB radio transmissions emanating from the truck are monitored by nearby Foundation listening posts for attempted contact by SCP-3899 to civilian recipients. Any individuals who are contacted are to be administered Class B amnestics, as are any eyewitnesses of the truck itself. All information about SCP-3899 is to be suppressed, and a disinformation campaign is active to make all reports of a mysterious truck that can appear out of nowhere and move at impossible speeds seem like nothing more than an urban legend. Just what is SCP-3899? Is the driver some sort of anomalous ghost, or perhaps an old eldritch god, a manifestation of freedom and perpetual motion given physical form as a diesel-powered behemoth on the highway? Perhaps the answer to that question is up to you.
The store manager had heard of crazy customers, but this was something else. A mob comes barreling towards the store, visible through the display windows as they charge down the street. They all look crazed, much closer in appearance to rabid animals than human beings, frenzying, foaming at the mouth. A few of them stumble in their haste while rushing for the automatic sliding doors. Some fall to the ground, only for others to clamber over them, leaping like athletes going over hurdles, with all the same speed, but with none of the grace. To the staff inside the store, they look like a pack of zombies, all apparently infected by the same virus that had given them such a ravenous hunger. For savings! "I thought Black Friday was a week ago," the trainee remarks as the doors slide open and the first of the mob spills inside. "Welcome to the Mattress Madness Megastore, everyone. If you could kindly form an orderly..." Within seconds, the trainee vanishes as a tidal wave of maddened mattress store customers starts to pile into the store. Each and every one of them is deranged. That much is clear, even from a distance. Across the store manager watches as his colleagues are shoved and tackled out of the way, just from their misfortune of standing too close to the entrance. It's only as one of the mob wanders closer that the store manager notices their eyes. Both lids stay shut, somehow closed, despite the crazed customer standing upright. They aren't screwed tightly. It's clear this person isn't forcefully keeping their eyelids clamped down. Instead, they're gently sealed as if the customer is still asleep, or sleepwalking. The whole situation was astounding. First thing in the morning, just at opening time, a horde of sleepwalking customers barged their way into the Mattress Madness Megastore, moving and fighting retail staff as if they were all still awake and fully aware. And as if that isn't bizarre enough, it quickly turns out these people aren't here because they're eager not to miss out on great deals on their bedroom furniture. To the store manager's horror, the mob has come to the Mattress Madness Megastore for breakfast. He watches an elderly woman, eyes closed, shuffle up to a luxury cashmere pillow-top California king-size mattress and proceed to eat it. And not bite by bite either, not even ripping off pieces to chomp through like so much cotton candy. In a far more horrifying fashion, the old lady eats the mattress whole. The store manager feels his blood run cold at the sight of her mouth widening unnaturally, unhinging like a snake eating its prey. Except in this bizarre unaired nature documentary, the snake is a human being, and its meal is a perfectly good bed that moments before had been resting on a stylish ottoman frame. The same exact display of confusing carnage is unfolding all over the Mattress Madness Megastore, people devouring entire Egyptian cotton mattresses. Some had even already devoured their respective meals and were already moving on to any accompanying pillows or cushions, feeding on them in much the same way. The few members of staff bold enough to try and intervene couldn't seem to wake the sleepwalking shoppers up, no matter how hard they gripped each one by the shoulders and shake. Nothing could deter them from devouring divans and munching on memory foam. A sudden, terrifying, and inescapable thought cuts through all the confusion, striking the store manager with an even greater fear. The stock room. Behind a series of doors, marked with signs reading "Employees Only," are shelves upon shelves of new units. The Mattress Madness Megastore being a much bigger outlet means that there's additional inventory to replace any mattresses on the shop floor that gets sold. and more mattresses mean more food for the mob. The worry that these sleepwalkers might soon develop a taste for human flesh never occurs to the store manager. He hurriedly races around the store, gathering up as many of his surviving staff as he can, and urges them to help him defend the stock in the back room. Some are already abandoning their posts, ripping name tags off their polo shirt uniforms and rushing to leave the store. They aren't willing to die for $7.25 an hour. The Mattress Madness Megastore has insurance. It'll cover the damaged stock once the crazed customers have feasted on feather beds, but the manager urges them to stay. The store's insurance covers stock that is damaged in transit, not mattresses that are eaten by hungry lunatics. A few stay, using the manager's desperation to leverage pay raises and more annual vacation days in exchange for their help during this crisis of cashmere carnivory. With his resistance force gathered, the store manager commands the remaining employees to charge for the door at the back of the store, but some of the nearby mattress eaters overhear in their sleepwalking state. The staff freeze, uncertain whether to bolt for the stockroom and risk being chased by the hungry customers. They need a distraction, a sacrificial lamb to grab the horde's attention, and with a solemn expression, the store manager realizes what he must do. This isn't a fight he'll make it out of alive. He leaps up onto a twin inner spring and calls out to the crazed customers. "Attention, everyone," he bellows. "I'd like to announce that all our mattresses are half off for the next 5 minutes." The crowd goes even more rabid, all eager to eat the pillowy pedestal the store manager is standing upon. His staff flees in the opposite direction, rushing to barricade themselves inside the storeroom, while their boss meets a grisly demise, and the crazed customers devour every remaining mattress in sight. But what on earth could have possibly caused such a scene to unfold? What was the inciting incident for this unprecedented act of mass matricide, the divan destruction, and combination carnage? All it took was one seemingly innocuous image, an unassuming online post, to stir over 7,000 people into a featherbed feeding frenzy. It's December the 3rd, 2020, almost an entire day before the deranged events that would soon unfold at the Mattress Madness Megastore. And just like he does most days after college, the student is trawling various internet forums in search of things to laugh at. He's procrastinating, and through inaction, allowing himself to be buried under a veritable avalanche of assignments, all with rapidly approaching dates that they're due in by. But he doesn't care. He can always do them tomorrow. As far as he's concerned, there's plenty of time for him to waste doing, well, very little. But no matter where he looks, nothing brings with it even the smallest hit of dopamine. It's been hours since he stopped checking the clock at the bottom right-hand corner of his computer screen, instead wearing out the muscles of his finger as it spins the scrolling wheel of his mouse. His social media feed is all the same, more doom and gloom, and despite his searching, he can't find anything funny to alleviate his ongoing existential nightmare for so much as a second. If anything, seeing every anxiety-inducing post about the state of the world, or dour headlines of reposted news articles, only makes everything worse. That is, until the fateful link appears in his inbox. It's from one of his friends at college, living in the dorm across campus. The pair of them constantly swapped links and exchanged memes over direct messages, sometimes while sitting in the middle of important lectures. So the student quickly opens up the latest message from his friend, pleased to have something to relieve the monotony instilled by the prior several hours' worth of mindless scrolling. Sure enough, his friend's message sits waiting to be read in his inbox. It's just a single blue hyperlink with no additional context offered, nothing to indicate what the link is or what website it leads to, or even why the student's friend bothered to send it. They're long past the need to provide context for the memes they send each other. The link redirects to a familiar corner of the internet to the student, the deep-fried memes subreddit. Just seeing that written in the hyperlink is enough to spur an enthusiastic click. It's like going home, back to somewhere warm and welcoming, where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came, and where the student knows he's bound to find something to entertain himself. A deep-fried meme is usually a heavily edited image with a number of different filters added to it. Its contrast is boosted, the picture is oversaturated and distorted, all to the point wherein the colors are unnatural, and the image appears as a grainy, washed-out mess of pixels. And they're one of the student's favorite subgenre of funny posts. Opening up the link sent by his friend, he finds one such deep-fried meme staring back at him. It depicts a man, long-haired and wearing dark clothes, presumably a fan of heavy metal music. In front of the metalhead is a table with a chessboard placed neatly atop it. The pieces on the board are distributed in such a way that places the metalhead in checkmate, and his opponent? Directly opposite him at the table is a glass bowl filled with water and a goldfish aimlessly swimming around. And to top off this Louvre-worthy masterpiece is text, seemingly cut and paste from various different places, judging by the alternating fonts and styles. The words have been placed into a sentence that reads, "Tell me your secrets, fish." And the student explodes with laughter, as if answering his prayers for some humorous entertainment to avoid working on his college assignments. His friend had appeared out of the blue and delivered a perfect deep-fried meme. But that momentary boost in serotonin levels quickly subsides, and the student knows how these exchanges work. This has to be reciprocal, a mutual trading of memes, like for like, akin to swapping trading cards in the playground at a younger age. And so he searches the subreddit for a token worthy of returning to his friend. He clicks on a search filter, sorting the results from the top posts of all time to the most recent posts of the day. These were fresh, hot off the presses, or out of the deep fryer in this case. And the newer they were, the lower the chances that his friend had already seen them. Scrolling through, the student is met with a few underwhelming attempts that weren't worthy of the prestige expected by the deep-fried meme subreddit. They'd be better suited for posting on r/cringe. But then, it appears, the perfect, deep-fried, crispy golden brown, cooked to perfection picture to send back to his friend. The distorted image is a photograph of a bed, specifically a king-size mattress, on what looks like a polished wooden bed frame, although it's not easy to tell thanks to just how grainy the picture has been made. Whoever edited this meme knew what they were doing, and has nailed the absurdist, bizarre humor that the student and his friend thrive on. A label over the mattress simply reads, "King size," and the meme is captioned in a classic top text, bottom text format with the phrase, "A feast fit for a king." And the pièce de résistance, the crowning touch that makes this meme worthy of the student's lofty standards, is the title given to it by the original poster. It sums up the meme perfectly, succinctly in 3 words: "Eat your mattress." The student erupts into uncontrollable fits of laughter, so much so that tears start to stream down his face. His stomach almost feels like it might explode at just how fine he thinks the post he's found is. Through giggles that hit like the aftershock of an earthquake, he copies the link to the Eat Your Mattress meme into a message and hits send to share the hilarity with his friend. Little does he know, he's just condemned his friend to the same fate that now awaits him. As soon as he falls asleep, it'll happen. And the student and his friend aren't the only ones either. The post spreads, either sent directly from one person to another or seen by those just browsing the deep-fried meme subreddit and happening across the Eat Your Mattress photo. Not all of them find it funny. They don't have to. They aren't even required to share it, to pass it on to someone else and help the post spread like wildfire. They've looked at it, and that's enough. Come the next day, an estimated 7,000 people across the world have seen the same meme, and it affects them all in the exact same way, becoming a directive, a command planted in their subconscious, one that they will act on without even realizing. It's been only a few hours since all the carnage erupted at the Mattress Madness megastore, but by now, the SCP Foundation has swept in and taken control of the scene. A cordoned section of multiple blocks, under the cover story of a dangerous gas leak. It's enough to keep civilians and prying eyes away without asking too many questions. But as for the Foundation personnel themselves, they've got plenty of unanswered questions of their own. 2 members of the cleanup team are reviewing the store's security footage, baffled by the sights of the chaos that unfolded there earlier that same morning. On the screen, frenzied customers are eating entire mattresses, stretching their mouths wide open and swallowing them whole. They watch as the store manager appears to make an attempt at a noble sacrifice to distract the horde of ravenous customers so his employees can rush towards the storeroom. But the manager is fine. Once the horde has eaten all the mattresses out on the store's main floor, they start trying to break into the stockroom out back, where the other employees have used layers upon layers of cellophane-wrapped mattresses to barricade the door. By the time the Foundation arrives, the customers have already forced their way into the stockroom and have devoured around half the mattresses, while exhausted employees try to wake them from their sleepwalking state. The Foundation sees to it that everyone affected is rapidly administered with memory-wiping amnestics to forget all about the ordeal. Their next job is to try and track down the source of whatever caused this unprecedented outbreak of mattress eating. But being experts in all things anomalous, it doesn't take the Foundation long to start pursuing possible explanations. Having already confirmed this wasn't a viral anomaly, their next course of action is to investigate possible mimetic causes, and sure enough, a common factor quickly presents itself. The mob that attacked the Mattress Madness megastore, along with subjects who have engaged in similar acts of mattress eating across the world, all have one thing in common. Each one has been exposed to the Eat Your Mattress post on the Deep Fried Memes subreddit. It takes some deduction on the Foundation's part to figure out the cause. After all, the meme in question is similar to a number of others posted in the same subreddit. As a result, the Foundation's online detection software, or web crawlers, initially fail to flag the mattress meme as an anomalous image. Once they do, it is designated as SCP-015-IT. But with a cause established, the pieces start to fit together. The Foundation's researchers soon realize what the image does. Another reason it was initially missed is that its effects only occur once the subject that has seen it falls asleep. The student is one such subject who lived through this. He dozes off in his gaming chair well past the middle of the night, hours after he's first seen SCP-015-IT. While sound asleep, without waking up once, he starts to seek out his mattress, laying unoccupied on his bed on the other side of his cramped dorm room. He and all the others who have seen SCP-015-IT then consume their mattresses, including in many cases their pillows, any cushions, and even plush toys. Their bodies stretch unnaturally to accommodate the meal, only to return to normal once they have done the deed. Having returned to normal, the student and the others like him remain unaware they've just eaten a mattress. But the Foundation is left puzzled. There's still one question that hasn't been answered. Their examination of the several hundred customers at the Mattress Madness megastore revealed that the consumed mattresses aren't digested like food ordinarily is. They vanish without a trace. So this naturally begs the question, where are all these eaten mattresses going? Well, the Foundation quickly comes up with an experiment to find out. They place tracking devices inside of the cell of a member of D-Class personnel and expose him to SCP-015-IT. Sure enough, the meme takes effect, and once asleep, he eats his mattress. The experiment is going exactly as the Foundation planned. Now they can follow the signal from the tracking devices to pinpoint the destination that all the consumed mattresses are disappearing to. And after several sweeps of the Earth's surface, their satellites discover a ping coming from a remote location in the state of Montana. MTF Sigma-16 suit up, ready to head out to the location. This mobile task force operates under the codename Slumber Party, and it's up to them to investigate. They come across a large structure. It looks a lot like a medieval castle, but it has been built out of mattresses and large cushions. It's the ultimate pillow fort. It even has pillars and all the fortifications you'd expect from a real historical castle, all made out of even more pillows. The Slumber Party team enters the fort and quickly discovers that the structure is able to anomalously reconstruct itself. Sigma-3 kicks over a stack of pillows and plush toys arranged to resemble a statue and watches as it reforms after collapsing. The team ventures deeper into the pillow fort and is quickly met with humanoid entities that are also made out of pillows. An entity swipes a pillow arm at Sigma-1, but she ducks out of the path of the attack. Drawing her firearm, she fires, causing a plume of feathers to spray out of the pillow person. The entity is unfazed, and several additional shots do nothing. Even a taser is ineffective. The pillow entities are exhibiting extreme resistance to damage, but Sigma-2 has an idea. She grabs a pillow from one of the walls and uses it to bash the entity attacking her teammate Sigma-1. The pillow person collapses into a pile on the floor, inanimate, and just like that, the mobile task force has a way to fight back. They all grab pillows and make quick work of their attackers before they move on to explore the rest of the castle. Then they encounter the king. There is a man sitting atop a large stack of cushions, wearing a nightcap and pajamas, eating feathers from an expensive brand of pillow. Scattered around him are empty pillowcases. Trying to ignore the smell, the Slumber Party team attempts to interrogate him. He claims to be the king of cushion, obsessed with pillows since a young age. Their smell, taste, and texture inspire him to create a kingdom of plush, his masterpiece of mattresses. It doesn't take very long for the Foundation operatives to realize that this man is insane. They question him about how SCP-015-IT, the Eat Your Mattress meme, works. How is it able to make people consume entire mattresses and send them to the king's cushiony castle? And why? Well, the king explains that buying mattresses is expensive, so in order to build his castle, he's outsourced the gathering of building materials. As he sees it, he is offering people affected by the meme a delicious meal in exchange for their beds, spreading the world of pillows so he can gather resources for his kingdom. Suddenly, he challenges the slumber party team to a pillow fight for having tracked him down. The King of Cushion takes up a pillow in one hand and charges towards the mobile task force, armed and ready to do battle with them all. He is quickly incapacitated by Sigma-1's taser and drops to the floor defeated. Now designated SCP-5126-A, the King of Cushion is transported back to the SCP Foundation for analysis and containment. Their testing reveals he possesses no anomalous properties whatsoever, and the King actually requires his stomach to be pumped thanks to the copious amounts of pillow feathers he's been eating. The Foundation gets to work dismantling his pillow fort and moving all the components into storage. And as for the Eat Your Mattress meme itself, the Foundation's web crawlers are keeping an eye out for any other posts of the anomalous image. And don't worry, if you find yourself giggling at a funny deep-fried image that jokingly implies you should eat your mattress, the Foundation will ensure you don't remember it happening, and they'll even throw in a replacement for your swallowed mattress at no added cost. Now that's a bargain. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like 15 best SCP stories that will blow your mind.